Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up, a concise show dedicated to bringing you the most relevant independent news as we see it from the last 24 hours. Sunday, March 10th, 2024. Thank you for joining me today. Quite a big show again today. It's a lot to get to. We're going to talk about some things that aren't necessarily on the pressing side of the news flow today. And you know, unfortunately, actually, because they're very important stories and a lot of terrible things happening all over the world. But they're important for two reasons, I think, that I included today. One, because they connect with some of these other stories that I'm focusing on. And the one particularly about blood diamonds that connects to the Democratic Republic of Congo is interesting to demonstrate not just what Israel is doing overseas in the world, but what these powers, the Western powers, or whatever you want to call it today, the United States, Britain, Israel, what they do in exploiting other countries for their benefit in a very, very prominent, open secret kind of way. And then Haiti being a conversation that I think is very important because of Western influence in a very interesting dynamic that's worth discussing that I'm not going to try to summarize in the beginning here, because quite frankly, I don't think that I would even say that I can see for sure what's going on and who's on what side. I'll explain what I mean by that. There's very clear points I can make about what suggest what the origins were, but behind Henry, for example, and the current leader, I guess, technically. But what's happening now, I have thoughts on why it's happening. And I wanted to highlight it for more. I just recently did, but I wanted to go over it yet again because of some partisan focus on Haiti today in particular, and make sure that you guys see what's been going on and not kind of get caught with the kind of partisan lens that seems to cover some of these moments, and often wonder why, personally, why suddenly the partisan mind's kind of focused on this story when it wasn't necessarily. It makes me wonder what else is going on. Not always that's the case, but just that's the thought that popped into my head. We'll talk about that. We'll discuss some of the follow-ups in regard to Israel in general. And again, I think the main parts today are going to be about the food aid conversation, the hostage exchanges, the follow-ups on these discussions, just the general story, and kind of following up on the important parts of it in general and what's going on, the ongoing genocide of Gaza. But I want to make sure we highlight when I framed it as the torture, the ongoing torture, not just, in fact, not even really focusing on explicitly what that sounds like, the idea of just Palestinians being tortured in prisons. I've done, I think, 2 different segments on that. It's not even deniable. Although Israel's government will deny and has denied and will deny and is denying everything that you can prove. So my point in saying that is it's not the explicit version of this we're going to go over. That is an open secret like all the rest of it. There is endless documentation from every human rights group, the United Nations. I guess they're all Hamas now, so we just ignore it, right? But it's an ongoing reality that they torture Palestinians in their prisons. And I mean like explicit torture, or as well as sleep deprivation, the positioning they put them in, no food, and sexual manipulation, all of which have been publicly discussed at the highest levels of power. And yet we point at it and you're a racist for highlighting something we've all discussed. But it's not that. It's about the more abstract ways that they're being tortured, but are just as much torture. The idea of what the focal point of the term today is going to be about how the aid, in fact, is being used, as it seems to me, to torture these people. And as I think somebody framed it on Twitter today, in a Hunger Games style, basically creating a dynamic where you know that they're starving. Like, and I'm talking, I don't even think Americans or just anybody in the Western world can truly, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure there's plenty of people, but most people in the more affluent West, let's put it that way, have no real understanding of what starvation truly means. We've never fully, I mean, let's just speak for myself. I never have been at a point in my life where I understand what that means. I've been pretty hungry, but always had access to food. The point is that there are people that are starving to the point of not just desperation. These words don't even do it justice. To the point to where they would be not willing, but driven to the point to where they would take action they would never otherwise do because they are going to die, their family's going to die, or because they're just so ravenous that they don't really think clearly. And I mean, here's a good picture to think about what they're dealing with. And this is why they're so desperate to frame this as, like Elon Levy, there's so much food, they're all lying, there is no famine, there's no humanitarian crisis, while people are killing each other to get the scraps of food that are being left. Think about like you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean. You're starving to the point to where you're about to die, and there's one piece of food sitting between you, and you're all best friends. How long does it go until somebody goes, well, I love you to death, but I don't want to die, and it's almost, I mean, I shouldn't even laugh when I say that, but it's so macabrely disgusting to talk about this in such a normal way. But I want you to hear and understand why the actions that, not just because of the way it's been done, that seems to be pitting starving people against each other with food that is acknowledged to be a joke in regard to what they really need, but the fact that they're ultimately planning that. That's what I truly think, that this is about an organized effort to create that, then throw the scraps into the pit and let them all fight each other in a way to ultimately do their job for them. It's this whole thing is becoming more grotesque by the moment. And I think, again, more people see it by the moment. And for some reason, people in power, and I mean, I could plenty of examples and plenty of thoughts of what those reasons are. I'm sure you do as well. But for whatever reason, just letting it go. And promising to keep giving weapons, promising to keep doing all the things, including vetoing ceasefires while otherwise saying they want a ceasefire. It's just, we're seeing the real face of what this is for the first time for some people. But we're also going to talk about some other connections to these stories around, I think it was the hostage exchange and the lies around that. As usual, make sure we break these things down. But I think the focal points of the beginning are the most of the bulk of the stuff we haven't got into. Let's put it that way. So let's start with a shout out of the campaign that I just put out, that I want to make sure if you guys missed the last show we did, that you don't miss this. And I have to tell you, I said my heart was full when I first put this out there in the first day. After, what is it, less than 3 days, we've raised $7,000. I just can't even express to you truly what that means to me. The support of people who are, and I mean, even just more than that, not more than that, or just in addition to that, people that are sending their prayers through this, because that Gives and Goes, I think it's a Christian-based platform. And I got to tell you, some of these brought a tear to my eye, what these people are writing to me and how much support we have. And as Derek wrote recently, we're going to be doing a show coming up this week. They're kind of just, there's been some, like, I guess, misunderstandings about what's going on. I mean, bottom line is Derek and I are, I mean, as he said on Twitter the other day, like he's TLAV for life, and we are going to work together forever because we respect each other a lot and we work well together. And the point is, what we're dealing with right now, and if you don't know what's going on, we're being attacked. To make it simple, read what I wrote here so I don't have to go through it all again. But we are definitely being under a coordinated attack right now with lawsuits and all sorts of stuff happening. And unfortunately, that's caused me to have to put a pause on the writing in general for pretty much everybody, just to make sure that I meet, if you read what I wrote down there, what's basically at the moment what I have to meet by the end of the month. Otherwise, it seems like there's going to be the threat of seizing and levying my assets. That's what I'm dealing with right now, for something that doesn't make any sense to me. But bottom line was, I had to make sure that happened. Otherwise, I was worried that the IRS would have literally tried to go after TLAV as my asset. And so the point was that that's paused, not stopped. And I promise you that and in fact, even today I talked with both Robert and Derek, and we are going to continue to put out some writing. Like, so it's just going to, so it's no longer even a pause. I've decided I'm going to let them write a couple of things, but it's going to be, that's it for the time being, because that's money that I'm worried we won't have. And if I don't have it to be able to push back, I'm worried we're going to lose this. So that's ultimately where this is. And I want to make sure people know, too, the reason, if you haven't heard me say it before, that I'm not giving any details in regard to the lawsuits is because my lawyer is telling me that that's unwise. That until we know where, it very well may be that could shoot myself in the foot if I put certain details out. But I promise you, that will be discussed. I will be, I was this close the other day just wanting to tell you what this law group is, because it makes me sick that they're getting away with what they do. And I think they're known for this. So anyway, you will know the details on that. Trust me. I mean, holding it close to the chest for obvious reasons. But all that being said, TLAV is not going to go away in the sense of, well, I'm going to keep doing this no matter what, whether I'm writing for somebody else or whatever it ends up being. But I don't want that to happen. And I want to be able to keep this and what we've built. It means everything to me and what you guys have built with us. So don't think that Derek's writing is going to go away, or Robert's, or anybody. I was even just talking to Matt Arrett about writing more for Substack and so on. We're going to make it work. But the one thing I want to say about this today, first and foremost, I just am absolutely blown away by the support that we got and everywhere, by the way, on Rockfin, when I did that first show, on Stripe, on everything. You guys have gone so far over the top. It makes me, it fills my heart forever. I hope you understand that. Like, whatever happens going forward, this moment is something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. But I wanted to point out something. The point of this in general was about the recurring concept. The donations, again, are just like overwhelming for me. But I wanted the way I was framing it the other day, and I forgot to say, right now, if you're out there and you want to support us, if you want to support the Last American Vagabond, I would argue, if you're going to say donate $50, I would say I would prefer you sign up for $1 recurring every month for the rest of your life, that you'll never think about again, that you'll never look to. $1 a month, very few people would care about. And so that's what I would prefer. So my point is, all that the donations we got on the Give, Send, Go, very few of them were recurring. And maybe people will come back because, and that was the point on this, is this Save TLAV page is like recurring monthly concept. My goal set for 10,000 was trying to get, always shooting high, to get another 10,000 a month in recurring donations, $1 from everybody who wants to help. As Derek pointed out the other day, with the hundreds of thousands of subscribers we have, if we just get half of them to do $1 a month, we can do so much more. So that's the point on this. So if you're able to do $1 recurring anywhere on our platform supporting, that's what I'm looking for right now, is the consistent guarantee of the support going forward, so I can keep like an outline for the work we're doing, and then make sure I can allot what we need, unfortunately, to be able to fight the lawsuits and the IRS and everything else that's happening right now. So as much as I took a long time even saying that, I wanted to make that quick. I just wanted people to know that's what I think is the important part, is the recurring concept. But nonetheless, again, overwhelming, guys. The love I have for this community, I just can't even express in words right now. So let's get into a couple of side points. Interestingly, East Palestine, not Palestine, but East Palestine, which we've already talked about a lot. This isn't just going to take 1 second, but I just had to show you this. Thank you for the person that sent me this. It's almost a point for both, quite frankly. The way that the media, and because there's a couple of points today, again, for corporate media, where they're saying things that I'm like, that's correct. Doesn't mean we should trust them. Quite frankly, I don't think any of these people from a platform level have any concern for what they're writing about. Otherwise, they would have talked about it long before 5 months of genocide, right? Or in this case, they would have been, here's the headline. This came out yesterday. People in East Palestine were told their homes were clear of toxins last year, period. That might not have been the case. Yeah, that's correct. Good thing you'd covered it after. Literally think about how long this has gone on. Norfolk Southern has already gotten away with it. They've literally already pulled funding for things that they promised they wouldn't. It's over, guys. They lost. Most people that were suffering in East Palestine are still suffering. I just talked with Scott C. Smith about this. He recently tested again. People are still getting sick. So my point in pointing this out is, why now, CNN? Why are you suddenly pretending like you care about stories that you've been personally obfuscating? I say personally, but they're all doing it. But they have made a choice as a platform to not cover the most important parts of like everything we've covered over the last, since I've been doing this. So does that mean suddenly CNN cares about the truth? I find that really hard to believe. Of course, that's certainly possible. I don't think that's what's happening. I think it's the point about Palestine. I think that they have lost so much influence that they're just going, okay. Let's think of it like this. Dr. Eli David, I've pointed out, I quite frankly think that person didn't care at all about whether you got vaccines or care. I don't think he cares at all about woke ideology. I think he's trying to tap into what he thinks a certain community believes in. We're watching the way he's a propagandist during the Israeli genocide. He went full genocide, full propaganda, and I think that's what it was always about. People like that seeding into certain groups, and then all of a sudden you can drive them in when it matters. Now, I could be wrong. My point is that I think that's a huge part of this. And I think people like that, they tap into what they think. It's just like Trump when he got elected. Federal Reserve, lock her up, go into everything you want, 9/11. And then what happened with all that stuff? It's politics, guys. They tell you what you want to hear so they get elected, right? So in this case, I like this view better. There we go. I think this is truly about the idea that they're trying to regain some people's trust by just going, what do they care about? What do real people care about? Right? We're not interested in giving you the propaganda narratives. In not every case, they're always going to, but we're trying to gain your trust. So we're going to go, hey, Palestine people are sick, right? Questioning this. Look at maybe the transgender movement's not actually as good. We're seeing that. That's actually what I think is happening. Call me jaded. Call me, contrarian. You're probably right, but I genuinely think that this is why. So on that note, You can read through this. I mean, there's a couple of things that I accidentally lost my highlighting. There was a couple of points, and that was, oh yeah, the 2 points were this. First of all, don't look no further than the fact that it says, where was it? Right here. A controlled detonation. They're still literally calling this a controlled burn. I mean, not even the narrative has even gone away from that. I was just talking to Scott Smith in the interview about that. And yet here's CNN going down. Maybe they're still sick all the way past when all the evidence has always been showing that, and still calling it a controlled burn, which is like the crux of the point. If you pretend it was a controlled burn, you're removing all accountability for Norfolk Southern and the government, by the way. CDC, EPA, all of them were there, as Biden told you. 1 hour, they were there. They made the choice. They blamed the local fire chief. They all lied to you, as I've covered many times. Norfolk lied. They literally hid information from the fire chief, who they forced to make a decision without knowing it was actually treated vinyl chloride. I can't believe that point has not gotten out. It will probably at some point, way after the fact, when it won't matter anymore. It was controlled vinyl chloride, or treated, meaning, as the person expert on Norfolk's side told him, Alan Shaw, it was most likely not going to explode. That was the whole justification for it to be dumped and burned. He didn't tell that to the fire chief, the volunteer fire chief, then told him he had to make the decision. Then he made the decision based on faulty information. Then they blame him. And he said publicly he was railroaded. No pun intended. Pretty wild. The other point is, you won't find a single mention of the word dioxin in this entire article. These people are hacks, and they're right now trying to get your attention, pretending like they're honest. That's what I think. Now, here, I'll include the rest of these two. This is from July 2nd, 2023, up to 14,000% more dioxins in East Palestine homes than compared to controls, which is just like, I don't even know how that's possible, but these were real tests repeated by Scott C. Smith and all sorts of other people. And our interview we just did with him. They continue to hide the dioxin poisoning. Now, let's talk about some foreign policy outside of Israel and Gaza that are in many ways connected, especially when we talk about Yemen. But I thought this were important, excuse me, to get into, just other things that are going on and try to not always, personally, I find it hard not I find it hard to pull my focus away from how much there is to cover around the Israel-Gaza conversation. I'm not talking like entirely, just post-October 7th, just the genocide, just the ongoing ethnic cleansing. And I think part of that's actually part of the plan. Like I said before, just flooding the conversation with so much incessant, like almost absurdly false stuff. Like, for example, claiming there's not just that they're not starving, right? Because that could be that you could argue, well, no, I disagree. They're not starving. Here's why. But that's not what it goes from they're starving, it's a famine, to no. They've got more food than they've ever had. Like that kind of response. It's like, well, what? Well, everybody knows that's not true. But they do. I keep catching Elon Levy putting out fake tweets of areas that we know have been destroyed, going, look at all the bread they're serving. And they're provably lying. Kogat just did the exact same thing. An official organization. These are Israeli cutouts, guys. They're lying to you about effing everything. But back to the point about Yemen and how all these tie back into the story. My point being, I'm just trying to get focused only on one thing. So it's hard not to be. Victor VicTop55 says, military expert Alexander Zimovsky said the Yemeni combat swimmers have cut the Gulf submarine cables using underwater BPP. Basically saying that they've cut the, internet cables aren't the right word for it, but what the words in here somewhere. What's the right word for it? Underwater cables, it's for infrastructure or just more than it's like data. I can't blank on the word for some reason. That's so funny. In any case, these are worldwide use, right? And so the argument is that Yemen is cutting these, which probably I wouldn't put out of the realm of possibility, essentially to attack, which the way it's trying to be framed by the Western government, the governments, the military, that's an attack. That's a terrorist act by the Yemeni terrorists. That's how it's all framed today, as opposed to the fact that they're the only state apparatus truly standing in between the genocidal actors and the genocide, right? That's literally the only state apparatus that's truly doing that. And now they're called them terrorists for it. Now, I think this is important because it's certainly possible. I could see a logical justification for why they would argue, by the way, just like the U.S. does all the time, and just like Israel's doing to Gaza right now, shutting down their electricity, shutting down their telecommunications. They do it all the time. And then they blame them for it, like the U.S. does with Iran or Venezuela or everywhere. So you could understand why Yemen would see this being justified, even like getting theirs kind of a thing, right? Like, this is what you do, we're doing it back to you. But I don't know if I think that's what's happening. So really, this is just this person reporting it, showing you what they're claiming happened, and showing all the infrastructure and how these move around, like, how these all. And by the way, another thing to think about, as you can see the image here, for why this area is important, not just the shipping lanes. But here's the AP article saying 3 Red Sea data cables cut. There you go. Data cables. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. As Houthis launch more attacks in the vital waterway, right? So it's not just internet, but it's, like just data, like massive flows of data. And apparently these things are wildly expensive, and the time it takes to go underwater and do it all, but they're reasonably easy to destroy, apparently. That's the kind of the gist I got from looking into this. And so the argument is that they did something that blew up these cables. And now, does this have something to do with the outages we just saw? Right? Or is this an attempt to do this by Israel and blame them, or the United States to do this to justify a great I mean, it's all these different angles you could think about. But I just want to include the story so you see this. Don't jump to conclusions about who's doing what. Everyone's going to try to label this as what works for their narrative, right? I mean, for all I know, the right's going to say China did it because of the border, whatever people want to make it into. Nonetheless, it's actually pretty interesting, because either way, it still works for certain agendas, right? To be able to go, well, our infrastructure is super precarious. We need to reimagine it for different things. Like, so you could see how these all overlap. So it's just interesting. But either way, let's just say the Ansar Allah movement, otherwise called the Houthi rebels, decided to do this. Would we call that a crime? It's just an interesting time right now, where there's obviously, if everything, was equal, and everybody's acting the same, well, you could argue, like I've said, with them firing on ships, that, yeah, you could call it, that's a crime, technically. But when you're fighting somebody who is actively not following any of the laws they force on everybody else, and in fact, acting openly as terrorist actors, and you do this in response to stop them from committing genocide, well, all of a sudden, things kind of fire. Like, it puts me in a difficult position, only because I've really tried to be objective about just the static reality. Technically, that's a crime. But I would argue, in my opinion, it would be something you would overlook with the dynamic of fighting somebody who was actively doing the same thing, in fact. Bombing Yemen, sieging Yemen, starving all of Yemen, and then you quibble about them firing a rocket, but making sure no one has died, not one person so far. Even the ship that caught on fire, nobody was even injured. They're literally saving people from shit. Who's doing that other than Yemen? So I think it's very interesting and obvious to see that these people are fighting with good intentions, not what you're going to hear from the Western media. Now, going over to Haiti, now, again, that point was just to keep that in your mind so you don't miss out that that's happening. And I'll follow up on what goes on there. And if we see any large effects on, like, telecommunications, we need to consider who's actually doing that, right? In Haiti, there's an interesting discussion that I thought was, again, the partisan focus on it, I thought was interesting. And here's Wall Street Silver saying, breaking, Haiti has descended into cannibal gangs, chasing people around and taking over police stations. Their prime minister has fled the country. That's Henry. I think it's Ariel Henry. So the point is, that first I'm like, cannibal gangs? Like, that seems a little bit, like, is that true? Is it propaganda? Right? What's going on here? Right? It's a pretty interesting claim. Now, I've seen the video already. It's not from, this was posted today, or actually it looks like yesterday, late yesterday. It wasn't from today or yesterday. And we've already covered the Haiti conversation. We'll come back to the article I did on it recently about Haiti fighting to break free from Western exploitation. Now, we have to understand the context of this. It's very convoluted, because in my opinion, Henry is essentially a U.S. puppet. Is in this situation seems a little bit too specific. I think he was put in power by Western interests, but at the same time, just like we've seen with Saddam Hussein or any number of people who are allies who suddenly go afoul of the U.S. empire, they just suddenly become the worst guy in the world. When, the truth is that they were always somebody they were taking. Well, usually they work with the bad people anyway, so they just weren't bad while they were on the U.S. side. My point, though, is that it happens in these kind of situations where they are opportunists, right? They don't like the person there because they actually want freedom for their people. They actually want the resources of their country to go back into their own country. Oh my God, God forbid, right? And so they go, well, let's get who's this guy over here? Who's this guy with the gang and the militia over, the person that doesn't care about the rule of law, but will do whatever we tell them to, but we'll pretend that's democracy. We'll lean into that group, give them all the power and money and let them do whatever they want. They'll run around raping, murdering, and thieving. We'll call that all resistance, right? And then when the side that the side actually fighting for the Haitian people, we'll call them terrorists. And we'll call them the ones that are circumventing democracy. Like, we've seen this 1,000 times. Now, right now, it's not that simple. What I'm saying is, at some point, this is how they play this game. My point, I think that Henry was that. Now, from that point forward, a lot has changed. I think what we're seeing is a lot of pushback from the people, tired of being occupied and dictated by foreign assets or entities. And I think the people of Haiti are fed up because everybody in the world knows what the Clintons did to Haiti. That's just one fraction of the story. And so I think what we're seeing, like my gut instinct on this, is that the people of Haiti are pushing back. And that includes gangs and all that, whatever you want to include in that, not the cannibal gang side of this, but the more prominent gang elements. But my question becomes, today with this story and maybe other gangs that come into the scene and start doing all the real dirty stuff, is that because they're being put into the situation in order to cause chaos, in order to achieve what the U.S. wants, which would be just a transition of power away from the person who's no longer working for them, which is what they're asking for. They officially wanted him to resign, and they wanted to put in a transnational government, which basically they would control. It's how this works. And I think he said no, and now they're asking to switch into some kind of election. But the point ultimately is, why is the U.S. even involved in that situation, especially when they think that they can influence anything, and they think that especially because I think they have influence over this person. But the gang situation is interesting, coming back to the point. I wonder whether or not, one, the U.S. and other entities are making these situations get worse, like they have in every other situation, like the Syria riots that they then pretended he shot at, but it was ultimately their people, or in the Ukraine, where they created all the neo-Nazi riots and then shot at their own people and blamed it on. It's the same story every time. In Venezuela, they tried to shoot their people and blame it on Maduro, but they got caught. It's the same thing. Israel right now shooting their own people. Interesting how overlaps continue. And so they are parts of this, I would argue, probably gangs, even if you want to call them that are just fighting to remove people that they see as foreign assets. Or I think it's also possible that we have a situation where Israel would probably find an interest in causing another situation in the world to be so crazy and so out of control that people look away from what they're doing. That's just a thought. These are all just things I'm throwing out there. You guys, please come to your own conclusions about it. But that's something I considered as well, especially with this story now seeding into specifically right-wing media that's far more interested in leaning into Israel's narratives. Now, cannibal gangs, with everything I said. And this video, by the way, in no way gives you any I'll play the video in a second. It's just people running. So I don't know why that has any context to the argument of gangs and so on. But so here he writes then, please downvote the note, which I don't see anymore. So I'm not sure. It might have been there before. I'm sure Elon removed it for him because he comes into the conversation. Must be nice to have that going on. But it says, please downvote the note as biased and not helpful. Community Notes is wrong. I provided the source article. Well, the source article is an absolutely ridiculous article from a terrible platform. So not just because you have a link to an article does not make it true. But it says there are no videos of the actual eating of people, so I used a regular video of the chaos in Haiti. Right. So I'm not accusing Wall Street Silver of doing anything, in my opinion, other than just pretending that's true, even though there's no actual evidence for it, other than somebody who was told that and shown an image that we can't see. I'll show you what the article says. So, but that's not his. I mean, I'm the one that is feeling obligated to be irritatingly objective. I hope everybody else would too, but I'm not going to hoist that on anybody that doesn't want it. My point, though, is the community note side of it. Well, it's not, the video isn't actually what that's showing. And the article is not, in my opinion, a valid source either. But let's look at what it says. And then also on the community notes side, it's hilarious how everybody goes, yes, and the community notes proved it when they say what you want. And then it says what you don't want. You go, yeah, that's because it's a bunch of Democrats or whatever. It's the same thing. I'm glad the Israel narratives do it all the time. Oh, community notes exposed, he lied. But then if the community notes prove they lied about a narrative, they go, that's because they're Hamas. And it's like, it's just so childish today. Two-party illusion for you. But here's the article. That's the one he cited. And this one is just simply regurgitating what the Daily Express said, which is interesting. So this isn't even the actual source of the claim, which is that original source doesn't even have the actual source. It's just writing what somebody saw while they were there. It's crazy. I'll show you what it means. Haiti cannibal gang are, quote, eating people they've killed, which is hilarious because that quote's not even in this article. It is, in fact, in the other one, but I find it ridiculous that Daily Star would literally put the quote in the title, which they didn't do in this article, and then not even include the quote in the article. It's just, that's the kind of platforms these are. But it says, on the streets as violence erupts. Now, it was highlighted, but let's, where was it? I just find the one thing I did have it highlighted was the cannibal part. So all it says is here is describing the violence in the country. A journalist said that cannibalism has been witnessed on the streets as the violence reaches unprecedented levels. First, and that's coming from the same Express US. Okay, so is the question that is the point that they're like gangs of roving cannibals, which is how that clearly is framed? Maybe, or is it people that are starving and so they've no other choice? Which people are like, let's realize this is a really, really stark situation. It's bad. I honestly don't know, but it seems like it's being framed in a way that makes it like this story that I think is meant to break out and be like, whoa, let's look over there. Just my personal opinion. Where it says, speaking anonymously, of course, because that's always what a good source does, they said Haiti's living in total chaotic situation right now, and it's total chaos everywhere. So the person who spoke to the cannibalism is an anonymous source. Okay. Doesn't mean it's false, but I just think that matters, doesn't it? Especially when we're reciting this stuff. That was the only mention in there. There was one other thing I did have highlighted, but I forget what it was. So going to the other one. The title of this one, which is the original source, at least for the Daily Star, Haiti violence sees police attacked with machetes as gangs wreak havoc in Port-au-Prince, which is the capital. Now it says, describing the violence in the country, a journalist on the ground told the Daily Express US that cannibalism has been witnessed on the streets as the violence reaches unprecedented levels. So that's where that quote came from, which is, by the way, interesting that they said, yeah, it's so strange. Look at, so this is a small thing. Oh, never mind. I take it back. I thought that was quoted right there. It's not. I was going to say they quoted something that wasn't there. But anyway, so that's where that came from. Then it says down here in quotes, and this is what wasn't in the other one. The gangs are heavily armed. Oh, actually, this was the other one. The gangs are heavily armed with guns from the U.S. Now, that's hard to place because, they have been funding the current infrastructure, the current power structure, which is that. So they've been they're all throughout so if they're using them now, it's hard to basically say, well, that's because they're being backed by the U.S. in this case. And quite frankly, like I said before, I think some of them might be, and they're the ones that are trying to make this into absolute chaos to justify what the U.S. is calling for, which is exactly what they're driving for with the transnational, basically somebody else not Haitian to take the place of the government for their protection, of course, like always, like what they did in Bolivia, even though it was all a manufactured lie, which they've never come back from. I mean, that's still anyway. But so we know that the Henry side of this is, in fact, at least was backed by the U.S. or the, Western powers. So is this an example of the U.S. funding some of these gangs? Or is it just the fact that those guns were already given? And I think that's really interesting when you realize, as always, that the U.S. government is just an arms dealer. They're just dumping weapons in some of the most chaotic places in the world and acting like they're doing it for freedom, right? Oh, by the way, Israel, here's a whole bunch of more weapons. Keep killing children, right? Fighting for freedom. But it says, he continued, and he goes, for instance, we have seen images of gang leaders, this is where the quote comes from, eating people they have killed. We have seen images of people being tortured when they are kidnapped. It is senseless. The goal here is not just to ensue fear, but to paralyze people mentally. Now, does that sound like people? Look, this is the thing that I always point out. Let me finish the quote. This is a message that Haiti is under the total control of gangs, is what he said. Remember, this is the anonymous source who didn't see it, who saw a picture from somebody else who showed him them eating. I mean, how do you even know what that picture denotes? Or not denotes, but shows. I guess I can't, if it was that vivid, maybe it's obvious, but my point being is it's a picture. I don't know. I just think this is wildly flimsy. Don't you? We should. Doesn't mean it's false. Anonymous source, but then on top of that, what they're doing, the point they make about, let's say, Assad and Syria, right? The point has always been, what's their argument? Well, he just wants to gas children because he's a maniac. He's a murderous psychopath killer. And in some of the racist circles, they'll be because he's a Muslim, because it's Islam. Laura Loomer will go off for 45 minutes about how it's all Islam, even though the Israeli narrative right now was the exact opposite, even though that's exactly what they're seeding through their assets like Laura Loomer, kind of being facetious. But the point here is that they're always going to the level of they're just an absolute maniac, right? That's why. You don't need any justification or rationale. They just like to murder children, which, again, I don't, like I said them every time. That's a really hard thing for me to accept. Even from the argument of the U.S. government, right? I would argue that they're not just drooling to murder people. So maybe some of them are, but it's about interest of their agendas and having a sociopathic disregard for what happens in the fallout. Now, I will be honest about the fact that I can't stop seeing open statements from Israeli settlers, Israeli Zionists, Israeli politicians who are just proudly celebrating the death of children. So maybe there is an example. Maybe that's where it stems from. And I'm not talking about all Israelis or all Jews or whatever else you want to jam in my mouth. It's about the people who are saying they like children being killed. So let's be clear about that. But my point overall is that when you see this, it's just about ensuing fear, paralyzing people. It's senseless. Eating people in the streets. It's like, okay, is this all a narrative? And that's usually where this comes from, to kind of rationalize while we shouldn't have any compassion or sympathy for what the average Haitians are fighting against. So we just go do whatever you need to put that back the way we want it. You see what I'm saying? So when it comes to Assad, same thing. Like I said, they're just always murdering children. Well, no, you could prove that he's going out of his way with policy all over the place to make sure that doesn't happen. And then you can see that the U.S. government, like I said, are the ones killing people and trying to blame him, or giving chemical weapons to the rebels, in quotes, as Carla Del Ponte from the UN proved in her investigation all the way back in the beginning of those claims. It was the rebels who used them. And where'd they get them? The moderate rebels? Well, you know who funded them. So I think that's about trying to create that. I think that screams that, but that's my opinion. Now it says, following the interview, the journalist said via message, quote, and interesting, this was left out of the other article. Very important to the big flashy claim in the headline. Cannibalism, he says, is not widespread, but definitely an indication of the worsening situation. It definitely happens on a few occasions. I don't know, guys. That seems really flimsy to me. Seems like a pretty crazy thing to be claiming with no evidence, an anonymous source that saw a picture, and then walking it back a little bit and going, well, it's not a lot. Okay, well, so why do we get a headline that is, Haiti cannibal gangs are eating people they've killed? And people are going to read the headline and they're going to share it. And what do you think is going to happen? They're going to pretend that this is exactly what it sounds like. Roving gangs of cannibals eating everybody. That's what's being shared on social media right now. Oh, here, this one first. Oh, wait. Oh, tell me I didn't miss that. Hold on. Here it is. I'm going to look at this first. So this is what I thought was very interesting. So here, let me play the video for you real quick just so you can see what we're talking about. It's just people running. And then, by the way, in no way did I mean to diminish this, like just people running. I just meant in the sense that it's not people eating people, right? But it's a horrifying situation. These are just people. This is, it's just like any of the other situations where Western powers are exploiting the country for their own benefit and letting it be chaotic because the people that they support don't care about the things they pretend they are fighting for. Human rights and rules-based international order, blah, blah, blah. But you can go, feel free to watch it. There's no indication of cannibalism in the video at the very least. I mean, that's been made clear. And I do think I know why I put this up front first. And the point was that this video is the same one. See, this is where they're running. And the point is, this is posted on the 8th. So it's not, the video is just like a stock here. But again, Wall Street Silver already kind of said that. It was just, he just put that there because it was a Haitian video. But here's what Elon said. Elon Musk chimes in and goes, cannibal gangs? Like questioning it, I guess, essentially. And Wall Street Silver just gives the link. That's it. And Elon Musk goes, oh, and look, people see that and they go, okay, it's real. Naive people who, for some stupid reason, trust what Elon Musk thinks, but that happens. And I said, well, if you read the article, that title is ridiculous. Typical for that outlet. You just got Twitter filed. First time I got to do that to him. But it's true because he's doing that for the title, and because it's a link, and now we're Twitter files because here's a screenshot. But the point is, it's not even remotely what that title suggests. Now, here is an article from Al Jazeera. U.S. denies pressuring Haiti PM Henry to resign, urges political transition. But I think from multiple different statements of people, both in Henry's circles, but also an international community. I think it was the BBC. I think it's in the article, but it was the Miami Herald reported that they did, in fact, try to get him to resign, which is kind of what I argue you would do secretly with somebody who was your asset, right? And now they're just switching over to, well, we're going to do what we want anyway. That's how I read it. But Ariel Henry is the prime minister, technically still. Now, it says during a news conference on Wednesday afternoon, this article went up March 6th. Wednesday afternoon, U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller, Mr. What do you guys call him? The vampire propagandist, said Washington is, quote, not calling on him or pushing for him to resign. But yeah, if Matt Miller says it's not happening, it's probably happening. But it says, however, Miller told reporters that the U.S. is urging Henry, quote, to expedite the transition to an empowered and inclusive governance structure that will move with urgency to help the country prepare for a multinational security support mission. Oh, okay. So otherwise you're urging him to step down. Right. Got it. That's exactly what you said wasn't happening. You just like to say it a different way. So you're just trying to put other people in power. That's very clear. Now it says that mission, which has the backing of the United Nations, not surprising, but has been stalled for months, will then, quote, address the security situation and pave the way for the free and fair elections, said Miller. Is Newland going to be involved in picking people for those free elections? You know, that's what they usually call free and fair, like with the free and fair Ukraine election that they handpicked, right? It's a joke, guys. And thank God it seems that people in the world, or I guess more specifically, people in this country are finally starting to recognize that. The world is very aware of the stomping ground that the U.S. government pretends the world is for them. But it says his comments come after the Miami Herald reported earlier on Wednesday that the State Department had asked him directly to agree to the transitional government and resign amid the growing crisis. But if you're asking him to allow a transitional government, what would you call that? You don't even need to include the word resign. It literally implies that he wouldn't be involved. If it's transitional, then it's going from him to something else. It's just the way that they play on the ignorance of people and just, basically, what's the way that phrase goes? 6 to 1, half a dozen to another, whatever. The way that they just say, it's not this, but it's this. And there's literally just another word for the exact same thing. It's just playing with your mind and hoping that you doubt yourself. But it says a 70-year-old neurosurgeon, Henry, was sworn in as Haiti's prime minister in July 2021, less than 2 weeks after President Moise was assassinated. And that's a whole story with that too, but there's a lot to get into. He had chosen Henry for the post shortly before he was killed. Now it says, meanwhile, Henry, who long enjoyed the backing of the U.S. and other Western powers, including the so-called core group of nations, faced a crisis of legitimacy from the very start of his tenure because he's a U.S. puppet. That's why. And they all knew it. So that's what immediately they saw pushback, and that's why there's been constant turmoil. And so my point would be, when you recognize the turmoil as an entity like the U.S. government that wants this person in power, well, what do? You try to stop it. In the sense where you find a way to justify action, right? So trust me, when I say stop it, I don't mean stop the violence. You want to stop the fact that there's actual pushback, real, whatever you want to call it, groupings of people, you can say gangs if you want, who are trying, and again, I'm not trying to suggest that every one of these elements are all good people or even all of them. I don't know. But what I do know is that these people are tired of having outside entities controlling their government. So the U.S. government's going to go, well, we can't have that. Just theorizing here. So they would then seed into the conversation really, really dangerous people. They're going to go through and start, attacking police with machetes, or eating people in the streets, or doing whatever else happens when the U.S. government funds groups around the world, as pretty much always. Then they go, look at how bad these people are, and Henry can't control it, so we have to step in, forlorn hero, here we come, right? Kicking down the door, here comes some democracy, right? That's how this works. Henry, of course, rejected the demand. He said he was seeking unity and dialogue. And see, this is where I feel there was that rift. So he's a puppet that suddenly was like, I kind of want to do what I want now. Well, that's not how that works. He also repeatedly said the elections could not be held until it was safe to do so. Pretty classic tactic for a dictator. And this is my point. And you see why this gets convoluted, because it's not like I'm saying that Henry's the good guy, and there's not really a good guy in this situation. Like, even in the sense that I'm not really have a clear picture of what is pushing back. Just because they're pushing back against an illegitimate president doesn't mean that they're good people, right? I mean, it's just I just don't know is my point. It could be. So it's important just to understand the main point to walk away from this. And I'm going to continue, as always, to keep up on certain situations. And if I see something important, I'll tell you. But, I miss things too. But the point is that this is because of the same thing. Western exploitation. It's the same thing we're dealing with everywhere. It's the same thing I'm going to talk about next with Congo, guys. It is constant. And it's not just the United States. It's Israel. It's Britain. It's France. I mean, these are colonial powers, guys. And people are finally starting to see through it, all because Israel decided to go full genocide. So I guess in a really disgusting way, we kind of have to thank them for waking the world up to what they all really are, because that's what I think is actually happening. But they're desperately trying to fold you back in with all sorts of things. The election is definitely going to be one to remember. I'll tell you that. Not for any good reason. But again, this was Kareem sharing this on the 8th. No mention of cannibals, just saying Haiti is collapsing as we speak. Interior ministry on fire. Attacks on the international airport. Again, on top of all that, why is this not being talked about? Where's the corporate media? Why wouldn't this be a massive story? Well, because I think that they're pushing this to happen for their own benefit, quite frankly. But it says gunfights outside the presidential palace, attempted breaches of the Ministry of Education and Supreme Court. Now, I will state very clearly, there's probably, I guarantee there are people out there that are like hyper-focused on Haiti, right? Like Karak Al-Massian is hyper-focused on Syria because that's important to him, but he also covers a lot of important stuff outside of that. My point was, I bet you there's somebody like him who would be far better to listen to about what's really going on the ground in Haiti. These are just my thoughts about what I see, right? And I try to cover a lot of stuff. My point is, seek out the people that are really immersed in this and have been covering it for 20 years. I'm willing to bet you there's stuff that I'm not even talking about. Now, I want to play this in regard to Maduro, speaking about Haiti. Oh, you know what? I think I forgot to grab this. Someone get that link. So this shared by Dan Cohen. This is Venezuelan president, and who, by the way, is very well understood. He understands very well what it looks like to be exploited by the West, right? I mean, it's Venezuela. It's long before Maduro. Chavez was nonstop assassinations. In fact, there was even one brief moment where they did in fact remove him from power, but the people put him right back in power, which is why they're so, they really do hate Venezuela, because Venezuela clearly doesn't like being told what to do. I don't know why this isn't loading for me. I was going to download this. Come on. But he says, Maduro denounces U.S. plans for an invasion of Haiti, which is essentially what we're talking about, the transnational government. But he says, we don't agree with any type of disguised invasion. Bringing troops from here to there, doing what they've done for 100 years. A new invasion is not the solution. And that same point, think Gaza. I'm going to talk about it if we get to it. I have a lot to get to today. I don't know if I'm going to last all the way to the end, but we've talked about the pier. And it's an illusion, guys. They're talking about military ships and thousands of personnel. They're literally going to join in the occupation. It's not going to be about help. If they wanted to help Gaza, they would demand Israel actually deliver the aid that's wasted away at the crossings that they won't let in, that everybody else is telling you about. They would stop giving them weapons until they did, period. But instead, they're going out of, think about how embarrassing this must be to argue. Well, again, I think it's for another agenda, but people still perceive it as the U.S. being too meek, too cowardly to force Israel to do that. So instead, they're doing the most expensive and least effective action. That's pathetic. But it's also because I think this is just beneficial, both for potentially for the drilling and the oil, right? Offshore, which is real, but also for just control. Are the Palestinians okay with you building a port on their land? Doesn't Israel pretend that they control the area so that you even ask them? Funny how that works, right? We'll come back to that. It's a good point right there. I didn't think about that earlier, right? You're pretending that that's their territory, right? They control it. They're the ones that voted and blah, blah, blah. But you're the one allowing the U.S. to put a port over there because, yeah, Israel controls it all. We all know that. Oh, you know what, though? I think that's why. Yeah, never mind. I waste all the time. It's in Spanish, so I didn't download it. But he's telling you that's what they do. Now, I was recently catching out the Slow News Day with Steve and Glory, and they shared this link. This link here: U.S. rice exported to Haiti may be harmful to health. What do you know? Must just be an accident, right? Sort of like when there are drugs that are deemed too dangerous, they get taken off the market in the U.S. They just go dump them in Africa, which happens like every day, and nobody seems to care about that. Well, we deem them dangerous, so it's okay to give them to children in Africa. Apparently that's okay. Literally happens all the time. Or vaccines that are deemed, they're problematic or also dangerous. Same thing happens constantly. So this to me is either a deliberate action against them, like we just talked about, manufacturing famine, manufacturing destabilization for their own benefit, or just not caring. Both are certainly possible. But here's what the article says. U.S. rice exported to Haiti may be harmful to health. This was posted on the 21st of February this year. Rice exported to Haiti, mostly from the United States, of course, contains unhealthy levels of arsenic and I forgot to actually look this up. Cadmium. This was the chemical element of the atomic number 48, a silverite metal. So clearly not something good for you. So arsenic and something with the atomic number 48. That sounds fantastic. Why is that in the rice? Now it says, which can increase the risk of various cancers, heart diseases, diabetes, other illnesses. Fantastic. Now that's not even where it begins. That's not even the most important part. University of Michigan researchers, in partnership with the Community Organization for Haitian Agriculture, say their study is the first to compare the amount of heavy metals in local rice versus rice exported by foreign countries. Can you guess what the difference is? I'm sure you're wondering which one's more dangerous. Probably not. Obviously, the rice that you're importing, charging them for the rice they don't need that they could just simply get from Haiti, is the more dangerous side of this. The rice coming locally doesn't happen. They just happen to not have those dangerous things. So look, I don't even know why the article doesn't seem to even highlight this. Where is that coming from? Is that because of the process of the way we farm in this country? Is that because of pesticides? Or are they literally adding dangerous things to the food they're giving them? I don't know. We should be asking this question. It says in the U.S., the Farm Bill will expire on September 24th, allowing foreign rice to flood local markets, this Farm Bill, making it really impossible for local farmers to sell their own. Does that sound like in the interest of Haitian farmers or in the interest of the Haiti famine or this is disgusting. This is destabilization and then exploiting them because of it, but not even giving them the something that takes them in a positive direction, which, by the way, shouldn't be that shocking to all of us with what we're seeing today. But the Farm Bill expiring in September apparently is giving an opening for this to potentially change in a good way. But I highly doubt that will happen. Sorry, I don't have a lot of faith in politicians. But it says Haitian farmers grow a wide array of healthy produce, but struggle in the markets when competing against cheap imported rice. That's how this works, guys. You're literally exploiting the entire country for the expense of everybody but Haiti. So really what you could do as a country that wants to help them is then you could, if you come in and you would buy locally and use that to help people that need it around the country. But no, they benefit themselves. They work with the companies that they give deals to who then give them political benefit down the line. And it ends up being something that's cheap and that's what we deal with. And in the process, Haitian farmers die, starve, or lose their job. Measure the arsenic and cadmium in local rice and rice from foreign countries. And what the tests showed, the average concentration for both arsenic and cadmium were nearly twice as high in imported rice compared to local rice. Now, what's interesting is I didn't have time to get into the study. This was something I found towards the end of my research. I'm interested in this. Is it that this is like near nothing to a higher amount that's dangerous? And they call that double? Or is it that there's already a dangerous amount in what they have there and this is just that much worse? That means a lot to me because I'm wondering whether this is something that is just naturally happening anywhere. You tell me. Is arsenic and atomic number 48 something that naturally comes up in rice production? I've never heard that before, but maybe it's possible. But either way, hurting them in every possible way. Ruining their farming infrastructure like they're doing everywhere else in the world. Exploiting them to benefit other people in other countries, giving them a cheaper product, and it's actually more dangerous for them, calling that aid, and then demanding praise for it. Now it says all samples of rice grown in Haiti were found to have arsenic levels below international limits recommended to protect human health, so not dangerous. Some imported rice samples exceeded those levels. So there's your point right there. Definitely above so why would you do that? Isn't that there's a level there that's supposed to be regarded as a problem and you well exceed that and are you not checking? Well, no, because you're dumping your bad stuff over into the country that no one's going to look into. Does it sound like somebody in the interest of humanitarian, aid or helping people in need? No, it sounds like somebody pretending they do and exploiting the situation for their benefit. That might as well be the definition of your government. Adults of varying weights consuming 3 or more cups of imported rice versus the safe local rice would exceed the daily amount, the minimum risk level for toxicity, meaning they're hurting themselves by eating. According to recent United Nations estimates, Haitians eat an average of 2.9 cups of rice every day. So to me, that sounds like an executed plan. Call me crazy. Most young children consuming 1 or more cups of local imported rice per day would exceed a health basis arsenic intake limit. Arsenic. Guys, that you could kill people with arsenic. That's what it is. It's a poison. It says the study was published earlier this month in the Journal of Agriculture, Food Systems, and Community Development. Quote, the system perpetuates poverty and hardship for Haitian rice farmers. Now, if you were coming in to help Haiti in a time of need, why would you do something that is a perpetual system of creating poverty and hardship and then telling the world that you're saving everybody in Haiti, sort of like the Clintons did, sort of like Bill Gates did in India and everywhere else, because they're lying to you and playing on your good nature because they are bad people, but they know that we don't want that. So it speaks to the reality that most people want good things. Most people are good people somewhere in there fighting through all the lies and horrifying situations. But it says, going forward, that this, as well as the millions of others in countries on the receiving end of cheaper foreign imports, because it's not just Haiti. They're exploiting every country they occupy, and that is why they occupy these countries. It's not for freedom. It's not for democracy. It's not to save them from something else, usually when it's something they created in the first place. No, it's to exploit them further. And quite frankly, guys, I mean, this is entire. This is absolute. That may shock you. We need to realize this is not some byproduct of something else. Now, they're very well maybe people involved that think they're doing good, but at its core, you can prove that they are not in this for anybody's interest other than themselves. But that's what we're fighting to change. With the 2024 Farm Bill soon up for discussion, there's an opportunity for legislators and their constituents to promote a more equitable system that ultimately benefits all. But again, I find it hard to believe that's going to happen when people are making money. And even local congressmen probably have, it's not everybody, but somebody probably involved with the 2024 Farm Bill probably has some kind of lobbyist that put money in their pocket to make that pass. And there you go. And so they have an interest in maintaining that. That's how politics works. It's called bribery, but not when you're a politician. Haiti has a population of 11 million people and is the second largest export market for U.S. rice, even though they grow their own. According to the study, the U.S. Farm Bill legislation has directed tax dollars toward making rice one of the most heavily supported commodities in the United States for nearly 3 decades, at the expense of other people and even at the expense of Americans, because that farmland can be used to grow food that could be utilized in this country that we do in fact need. But instead, we take it from other countries. And that is the food chain that they've made into being something that is inefficient and vulnerable deliberately, which is increasingly becoming a talking point, which we'll probably get into in the near future. But it says in the U.S. for nearly 3 decades, the overwhelming presence of foreign and particularly U.S. grown rice in Haiti is grounded in a history of policy reforms intended to allow this heavily subsidized U.S. rice to flood Haiti's market. According to the researchers, the study, it says, quote, it's an avoidable situation. There are important implications for policymakers, vendors, and consumers who seek to safeguard health in Haiti. And see, this is what bothers me about these things. Now, in a study, they know that if they come out and said they're doing it on purpose, they wouldn't get funded. They'd probably lose their job. So they end it by acting like they're doing this, oops, we tripped and did the wrong thing. We accidentally exploited you for our own rice production. Our bad. No, this is an executed plan at their expense. But of course, they have to frame it like, well, it's an avoidable situation. They just need to think about how they're going to help them better. No, it's exactly the opposite. But it says, by maintaining a system dependent on almost exclusively U.S. rice, Haiti is importing a substantial amount of risk. Not just because it's actually potentially hurting you, but because the actual rice importation is constantly cutting away at your own infrastructure, your own support system. You're constantly relying on a country that doesn't want you to succeed. And that's why they put puppets in place to allow the slow degradation, dismantling, destabilization of their countries for their own benefit. Just look at how they've, not just the United States, it goes back well before their establishment of the US, but look at Africa. That's why it is held in poverty, because everyone's exploiting them. And speaking of that, actually, hold on, before I was going to talk about Congo next, I want to show you a couple things that overlap with Haiti. Somebody posted this today. Shadow of Ezra says, Laura Silsby, during her tenure with the Clintons, was apprehended in the act of trafficking children from Haiti to the Dominican Republic. It's a very public story for those that would immediately dismiss that. It's very public. It was covered. And the point is that Hillary Clinton personally stepped in as the State Department and her personally to get Laura Silsby taken out of being held by the Haitian police and brought back to the United States, and then was let go. And then changed her name and then started working for, what's it called? Child Service Alerts for like missing children. Think about how weird and disgusting that is. Now, he goes on to say, despite facing a crime punishable by life imprisonment, she was released by the Haitian government after serving only 6 months. During her tenure as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton employed significant efforts such as utilizing former President Bill Clinton as a negotiator to secure her release and return to the United States. Additionally, 9 other participants in the endeavor were also released, despite their claims of limited involvement in the scheme. So she now operates under a different name and is employed by Alert Sense, a company specializing in emergency alert systems for various crises such as severe weather, natural disasters, and public incidents, or missing children. Here is the article we put up back in 2017. The Clinton-Silsby trafficking scandal and the media cover up the true origin of Pizzagate. Now, that's not there's a lot of stuff around that narrative that was completely ridiculous and a lot of stuff that was very valid, like what Ben Swan would cover. The point was, this is the thing, the real origins of this that get conflated with pizza parlors and a lot of the lies they spun around that. Now, I'm not suggesting there is interesting stuff around that pizza parlor in general. But the story that was spun about the shooting and all, and Clinton and children in the basement, there was a story that was put over it to make it look ridiculous. And that was only one small piece of this. This is a real point about, even Chuck Todd did a segment on how there were accusations of pedophilia in the State Department. It was an entire segment, you could look it up on YouTube. You'll find it. But it gets completely pushed aside. This is real. And here's even her picture in the Alert Sense. Oh, actually, funny enough, I forgot I put this in there. Here's the Chuck Todd thing. You can see it, where alleged of sexual misconduct covered up. Here it is right here. Chuck Todd comes in. Oh, it's weird. Oh, well, all you guys can look at it. It won't move for some reason. But this was a full report. And she changed her name to Laura Gaylor and worked for a company that does child, Amber Alerts. I just think that's so weird. Either way, the point is that this is an example of what was going on there. That literally, why would the State Department step in and save somebody who was arrested literally while trafficking children across state lines, or national lines, international borders? That's what happened, because there's something very, very wrong there. And it goes into, it's not just about Haiti, guys. There's exploitation that goes well beyond crops, right? We talk about these sexual blackmail networks and the sexual trafficking. This stuff is real. It's funny how there's like this weird air around these topics where people want to dismiss them. That's very organized with the Epstein discussion and all this stuff. It's provable. And so anytime there's war, look up the stories about the missing children during the Syria conflict. There was massive human trafficking took place during all that. And I think it's being executed by a lot of the people we don't admit. Western powers. Otherwise, I'll include a lot of these as well. Former Haitian president of Senate exposes Clinton Foundation. She tried to bribe him. The video's in there. You can listen to him tell himself. Haiti official who exposed the Clinton Foundation found dead. Doctor who exposed Clinton Foundation corruption in Haiti found dead. Ben Swan exposed the truth about U.S. foreign aid and the Clinton Foundation Haitian fraud. It's a great video, by the way. You should watch. I had to dig this one up. It was hard to find. Haitian authorities arrest Americans transporting cash and weapons amid uprising. This was 2019. And this gets into the time frame of the current PM and overlap, and the point about the idea that they were already trying to manufacture the regime change. So here, this, and remember, this was the story we covered where these guys got arrested. They got caught. The U.S. government stepped up and said, hey, we'll take care of them, and then just brought them home and did nothing. They committed crimes. They were completely found guilty. Nobody cares. Because if the U.S. does it, it's not wrong, right? This was in 2022. We also talked about Haiti regime change, where they were also trying. Then this was the one I recently did, 2024. Haiti fights to end Western exploitation, and Congo continues to be manipulated. And of course, Israel has defeated itself, which is what's happened. But let's talk about Congo for a brief moment. I wanted to highlight some stuff on this as well. Going into the overlap with Israel. The Congo uprising and the CIA stooge was an article I wrote in 2016, talking about the dynamics of who was in power and what's, I'm not going to go over it all again. I did it in this show, if you want to watch it again. But just to understand, this is exactly the same kind of dynamic where this is a country, likewise, with all sorts of natural resources, rare earth minerals, in particular, lithium, everything, really, that is being wildly exploited for the benefit of the countries that are exploiting it. Not China, by the way, right? That's always these games about, they're trying to sneak into Africa. Well, they very well may do exactly the same thing. I wouldn't surprise me. But the point is, the country that is exploiting all these are the ones that are trying to pretend they're fighting for rules-based international order. And they are keeping these people in crazy poverty for their own benefit. Now, the point I want to cover today, the full story, again, check this and this article out to get more on that. The story just today. Khaleesi shared this. Gaza is not only genocide, the only genocide Israel's guilty of. Oh, I know I shared this. So much of that. Diamonds drenched in blood. Unmasking Israel's role in the Congolese crisis. Diamonds drenched in blood. Here's the article itself. Well, I had this highlighted, but I'm not going to try to go through it again. The bottom line, I'll read some of it. It's so frustrating. There was some important stuff in here. Just look at this image, actually. I've grabbed this. Just look at that. Just such a perfect example. For those in the podcast, it's what it shows is the images you see in both the lithium mines and everything else. And this in the case, the diamond mines, and these children working in Africa, just wild poverty, skin and bones out there and just working 14 hours, all day. And the other side of it, you've got this lavish Israeli room full with a Star Dave in the background with all these chandeliers and diamonds everywhere. It's crazy. Now, dang it. Let me just read the beginning. It says, in the heart of Africa, where the earth is rich with diamonds, lies the Democratic Republic of Congo. And as I say before, not to be confused with the Republic of Congo. It was just the Republic of Congo is different. The Democratic Republic of Congo is a different place. Yeah, that's confusing. I know. It says, a land steeped in beauty and turmoil. This nation endowed the vast natural resources has become a tragic illustration of how global greed and geopolitical agendas can ravage a country. It says, in 1997 marked a pivotal moment in this narrative as Israeli diamond businesses began penetrating the Congolese market. And which, interestingly enough, think about the vaccines and the excess death. Same concept. The moment they got involved, it's identically aligned with identically. That's not identically interesting. It is aligned in an identical fashion with when they were involved and how bad it began to started getting. Can't talk right now. Now, of course, you could argue that that's just a coincidence, or as the article suggests, that when you have a massive effort to exploit a country for even any resource, and diamonds or anything else, or even just harvesting massive amounts of resources causes a lot of problems, especially when you get into how it's happening and what they're using it for. So the incursion coincided ominously with a rapid destabilization of the country. Now, it's not unique to Israel, but this is an example of how Israel is doing the same thing that the U.S. government is doing. This is their fault, along with everybody else involved with the exact same thing happening in Congo for rare earth minerals and whatever else. But the interesting thing is how fast this happened after they started rapidly mining the diamond mines at the expense of the country. It says they were plunged into a vortex of conflict and chaos And the reason for that is not just the mining, but what they do with the transaction to get it out and what they do with the people that are willing to work with them on the ground in Congo. Literally an exchange for weapons. And they've caused that. And then it becomes chaotic. And the people that give weapons, probably the gangs, maybe the ones eating people in the streets, who knows, suddenly start being more powerful. And they don't care because as long as it's chaotic, Israel can do whatever it wants. Underscoring the disastrous impact of external economic interests in politically fragile regions. Exactly. This was not merely a coincidence, but a stark demonstration of how pursuing natural resources can trigger and exacerbate regional instability. The echoes of this turmoil continue to resonate, revealing the deep scars left by these exploitative engagements. They're talking about Israel's engagement here, guys, just so that's clear. The recent history of the Democratic Republic of Congo, or the DRC, intertwines with controversial figures. Dan Gertler, and I'm not going to get into that part of it. There, you can make sure you read the whole article. It says Gertler's dealings in the Congo led to U.S. sanctions, but the Trump administration controversially lifted. Not surprising. Instead, they reflect a larger, more systemic pattern of Israeli involvement in African mining, particularly in the Congo, a manifestation of a global practice where resource-rich African nations are often left grappling with the consequences of corruption and exploitation. Indeed, let's expand the section to illustrate the intricate connection between the Israeli diamond industry's economic significance and the alleged destabilization in Congo. Well, that's a weird way to frame that. Clearly, there was destabilization. The point is, was it Israel's fault? Now it says, Israel's foray into the Congolese diamond industry marks a significant chapter in its economic narrative. Since entering the diamond trade in Congo in 1997, Israeli companies have carried out a dominant position, contributing substantially to Israel's economy. As of 2016, cut diamonds accounted for an astounding 23, in other articles, up to 30% of Israel's total exports. So you might ask yourself, how do you know they all come from Congo, Ryan? What if Israel's mining their own? Well, guess what? They literally have 0 diamond mines to speak of. So that makes it even more absurd. Israel has no diamond mines, so the raw material must be imported from Africa, Australia, North America, and that article comes from Israel21.org. But if they don't have any diamond mines, why is it that Israel became the central location for this process? Now, maybe you can argue because they have the technology and the lasers to be able to cut them the way, sure. But let's realize that wasn't the way it started, okay? So we're at a point where this was an immediate exploitation at the expense of Congo, and it's patently obvious because you can see that they have no diamond mines, but weirdly enough, they're the ones exporting for all the profit for pennies to pay children to mine them, which is also what we're going to get into, the open secret, if you even want to call it that, it's not even a secret, of the fact that they're using child labor in exactly the situation that we're talking about. Israeli mining operations using child labor, or the entire mining operation for diamonds in Congo, mostly child labor. It's an open secret. So how are we going to pretend that while we can see them exporting the vast portion of it at their expense while Congo is left in poverty, that they're not explicitly exploiting this country? Israeli companies have carved out a dominant position, contributing substantially, 23, almost 30%, making them the country's most significant export product and constituting 12% of the world's diamond production. 12% of the world's production from a country that has no diamond mines. This industry is not just a business sector, it's a powerhouse of national economic strength for Israel, bolstering Israel's standing on the global stage. See how much this did for them? So they exploit, so bottom line, again, Zionism being rewarded for terrorism, exploitation. Not surprising, seeing as how the U.S. does the same damn thing. The government. However, it says this ascent in the diamond trade coincides alarmingly with the descent of the Congo into conflict and turmoil, raising critical questions. Amidst this economic boom, the Israeli diamond industry continues to garner prestigious accolades. Nobody seems to care about the obvious. It says the dichotomy paints a picture of hypocrisy where the industry's prosperity and recognition within Israel are juxtaposed against the backdrop of the suffering and turmoil in regions from which these precious gems originate. It's the same everywhere you look. The gold in Venezuela, the lithium in Bolivia, it's the same thing they do everywhere, guys. It's amazing we haven't had this breakthrough like it is now, but I'm worried with other things being done, elections coming up, that we're going to get dragged back in and people will lose their focus on how this is not just one situation. It is the reality of what these entities are. Down here it says, I'm trying to look really quickly and find it since my highlighting went away. There was a point about let me see, that the arms are important. I want to find just the part about the arms trafficking. Let's see. The activities of Israeli businessmen in Africa, particularly in cases like Gertler, prompt the critical examination of the intersection between Zionism, Israeli foreign policy, and African geopolitics. These instances, occurring within a broader context of resource exploitation, reflect the complex nature of Zionism as it intersects with global economic and political agendas. Israel's foreign policy, often seen as an extension of its national ideology, raises questions about the role and influence of Zionism in shaping these international engagements. Interesting. The resource-rich but economically struggling African nations, the actions of individuals like these two people have significant implications. It is imperative to assess whether these actions align with the ethical standards and values professed falsely by Zionism and Israeli policy. This scrutiny is about compliance with legal norms and the moral and ethical implications of these engagements, but they don't care about that. That's, shockingly obvious right now. The narrative of development and aid, often used to justify foreign investment in Africa, must be critically evaluated to ensure it does not mask exploitative practices, which is a very, very flowery way of saying we all need to highlight that they're doing the wrong thing and not letting them pretend to help them while exploiting them, which is what I always talk about, the worst of the worst. Not just doing the bad thing, but doing the bad thing and pretending you're doing the good thing, and even worse, wanting to be praised for it. That's what they do. Yeah, I think this is it right here. Okay, good. Yeah. I'm actually glad I did that because I think I skimmed past that part when I was highlighting. It says to truly grasp the impact of foreign exploitation of Africa's natural resources, it is essential to turn to the voices of those directly affected: African activists, political analysts, and the local population. African activists consistently highlight the disparity between the wealth generated from natural resources and the persistent poverty experienced by local communities. They all see it, guys. They know what's happening. They just don't have a voice. That just like the Gaza people or the Palestinian people didn't have a voice, not really, until Israel went full genocide. They argue that deals made by foreign businesses like the two that are mentioned often bypass the needs and rights of local populace. Hold on. Maybe it isn't. Make sure I didn't. Oh, of course, I don't even just say it. Same thing I always do. I'm ahead of myself as I usually do. So the part I was looking for isn't even in here. So the point is, see if we can finish. Now, in the interest of time, then, since I'm probably something else, but what I was going to get into, and now I'm going to have to wait for this article, is that there's the arms overlap, why this is happening and why. So what we just established here is the idea that the correlation of the destabilization of this location and the growth of the diamond exploitation by Israel is impossible to miss. And the fact that everybody there sees it, and also that they're using child labor to do it. And then we're going to get into the arms overlap for why that's continuing the destabilization. I argue intentionally. But this is from Euronews. The Congo child diamond miners. And it is a open secret. It's like the lithium. How it's allowed? Knowing that your countries that are pretending to fight for equity in the world are exploiting them for lithium and everything else. It's a joke, but it's being put on display right now. Thank God. Here's another one. This one was in 13 years ago, guys. 13 years ago. This one's from 10 years ago, and it's happening right to this very day. Children literally ditch school to go mine diamonds in the Congo. You know why? Because they're desperate for money and food. It's constant. Here's articles from Reuters. Flawed diamond regulations fueling child labor in Congo mines. Well, who makes sure the regulations are flawed to maintain this? The same people who are dictating everything else. Child labor in diamond mines in the DR Congo. Now, let's be very clear. The diamond mines in particular are predominantly there's a huge Israeli engagement there. Now, there's other people, the U.S. and so on, but child labor is ubiquitous. So let's be real about this, that the Israeli government and the U.S. government, anybody else involved, are utilizing child labor. It shouldn't be that shocking. It happens all over the world, usually done by people that you wouldn't expect. Now, this article is important to end this segment. Israel's dirty trade in Africa, diamonds, weapons, and settlements. Now, here's where it all comes together. This was 2017. It says Israel is considered one of the most important countries that import rough diamonds and the most prominent countries that export polished diamonds. Most of these diamonds come from African countries like South Africa, Liberia, Congo, Ivory Coast, amongst others. These countries are directly linked to groups committing massacres against civilians in order to obtain diamonds and trade these diamonds. And to trade these diamonds, and with these diamonds leads to the death of tens of thousands of people annually in the countries of origin and trade with these. So first point is, before we even get into the exploitation out of the country, or rather the trade out of the country and what that does in the exploitation, just the process of mining them, you have groups who are already, by the way, armed because of the weapons part we're going to get into next, who then use violence to take the diamonds from other people to be able to trade them with Israel. These are blood diamonds, guys. That's what the name comes from. Violence in order to get, and then there's been scandals like De Beers and all these main companies, and that's just the name that came to my head, but they've been called out for looking the other way, knowing that there's conflict diamonds or blood diamonds that they're happily buying up. Actually, the movie Blood Diamond actually does a good job of really making you understand how that works. It's actually a good movie. But so allowing that to be the case and even arming the ones who would then commit violence against children, women, anybody else to get that, to profit for it, and then you exploit the country. I mean, there's no way to pretend this is some kind of act like they don't know it's happening. This is indicative of who these people are. And I mean that in sense of power, whether it's the U.S. government, Israeli government, they're willing to do this to people who are vulnerable. The sale and export of these diamonds are linked to major arms deals, the creation of civil wars, and financing the fighting groups. This has caused the diamond trade in Africa to be called the dirty trade. The jewels also called blood diamonds because of the blood of thousands of Africans is shed in order to extract the market and market them. Now, when we're talking about think about any of these situations, Haiti, Congo, Venezuela, when they seed in the weapons and the funding or anything else, or how about with Israel funding Hamas? What they do is create the counterbalance, the element they can point to say, see, they're allowing that, right? They can't manage their own country, but also at the same time, they grow in power. Then you get these, war, what do they call them? Like Afghanistan, not war leader. What is it? For some reason I can't think of the word, but like a tribal leader of these gangs. And they're powerful because they have backing of huge international entities. But you don't know that. And so then they use that as the excuse to argue, one, that they've allowed it to be that way, but then lean into those groups to end up taking power when the time comes. And that's all that's happening here. So the reason that there's all this happening is because of what they have created. Now, it says the diamond industry and its export is one of the most important Israeli industries. 30%. So people cite between 20-something, 25-something, 30-something, depending on different factors. But it says 30, and this does cite 2011, so it changes over the years, obviously. 30% of the gross national income in 2011 was based on these the diamond industry that they were exploiting from Congo or elsewhere, while in 2014, the trade of rough and polished diamonds in Israel amounted to $9.2 billion. Imagine what that could do for the country. This industry contributes $1 billion annually to the Israeli Defense Ministry budget. So not only are they exploiting that country, but that exploitation then ends up exploiting somebody else, like Palestinians. Israel's distinction in this trade is due to several factors. Most importantly, its relationship with the apartheid government of South Africa. Surprise, surprise. Another reason, and don't forget, Israel's, in my opinion, was like the leading force behind South African apartheid and the ethnic weapons they were working on and all the horrible things that were happening. Not a shock now that we can all see it on full display. That's what Zionism is. Israel currently is an apartheid state, according to every human rights group in the world. But it says another reason for this is Israel's disregard for international laws regarding arms trade and exports. just like with the U.S. government, literally arming the Azov movement, even though they have current legislation that says that's a crime. Think about how dumb that is. It says, which is something it has done with several racist and fascist countries in Africa, Israel, that were ravaged by civil and ethnic conflicts and wars. Made it worse, fanned the flames, and exploited it for your own benefit, because that's what leaders do. Wild. I had a point there I lost about the U.S. Anyway, it says the accusation is clear, and it indicates that Israel steals African diamonds in return for supplying Africans with weapons and military equipment in order to fuel the internal ethnic, race, and regional wars on the continent, despite the condemnations issued by a number of international bodies and organizations. These are usually directed to major Israeli traders, but none of the blood dealers, as dubbed by these international organizations, have been put on trial. So now, bringing that into context and asking yourself today, is that why we're suddenly seeing this thing explode? And all that now partisan media is going, look at Haiti, look over there. Is it about to get wildly worse because Israel's fanned the flames like they always have? Or U.S. government too? Certainly something we should consider. But the point that we can prove is that they're doing this. This is what they are. Now, one last point before we get into the rest of the Israeli conversation. Okay, we're not that far in today. I thought this was hilarious, but actually pretty spot on. I was like this. Now, I to be quite frank, I haven't even looked to see if this image is like doctored or not. Maybe it is, but I nonetheless, the point I want to argue, or I want to express, this person on Bastion, or actually I think it's now, wait a minute, that's weird. This name changes. Anyway, whatever this platform is called these days. And the person shared this. It says, a job can wear you down. Just ask Victoria Nuland. And it says, Victoria Nuland, when she first entered government and when she officially left, evil transforms you. Look at this. Now, at the podcast, and I wish I would have grabbed this. I forgot about it. Truth Stream Media put this out. Just absolutely spot on. Like, in my opinion, won the internet that day. Put out a comparison between Vigo from Ghostbusters. If you remember, actually, I should just grab that real quick. Hold on. Oops. Dang it. There we go. You're going to laugh. This is so incredibly good. It's crazy. So look at this. Look at this comparison. Here, let's do this. Okay, so this is Vigo from Ghostbusters 2. Remember that? Look at her face and tell me that's not exactly what she looks like. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just like, that's actually pretty crazy to me. It's like, it's not exactly, but like, it's really, really almost uncanny when you look back, like the face and the scowl. Anyway, the point is that look at what she looked like when she was younger, and look at what she looks like. And even like the fact that she's not smiling and she's visibly like grimacing. That was like her official image for, I mean, anyway, that's crazy. And I think I really believe this is evil transforms you. Look at the way people are. I've done this in the past, actually. People that are in the position of this White House spokesman or the press secretary. You look at them, or even the State Department, or like Matt Miller or Kirby. You look at them, unless they're a sociopath, which a lot of them are. Look at them when they start and compare the way they look when their face is like ghostly. Why? Because it eats your soul when all you do is lie about horrible things. Like, no, we're not murdering children. No, we're not starving them to death. No, we're not completely arming the genocidal Israel. No. Yeah, you are, though. And they sleep with that. So if they're not actually a sociopath, I'd imagine that's pretty tough. And it wears on them. Now, I'm not saying that means that she cares. What I'm saying is you just spend your entire life doing terrible things and murdering lots of people by default with regime changes. Yeah, it's probably going to wear on you too. Now, on to Twitter, 2 last points, and going into Israel's conversation. I thought this was fascinating just because it relates to Eli David. Mo Favaz shared this. Calling out Israeli lies violates Twitter policies. This platform is completely rigged by Zionists. I completely agree at this point. Look at this. He put this. This is him. He got blocked temporarily because of this, or suspended. He wrote and tagged Eli David, which is my opinion probably what got the attention on this. Got Elon tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Do something about this." It says, anyway, I'm not saying I know that, but that's how I see this all happening. It says Eli, COVID, and his settler colonial apartheid regime of Israel are nothing but blatant liars. Okay, tell me how that's a violation of even your hateful conduct. It's a provable colonial apartheid state. You can quibble about the word regime. That gets flown around by everybody all the time. But it's apartheid according to every organization that matters in that conversation. And I shouldn't even say that. As far as I know, literally every one of them. Colonial is a provable point both for the United States, for Israel. In fact, they're literally currently building new colonial settlements. And the Zionist project called themselves the colonial project. Or is it because you're calling them liars? Oh my God, how dare you must hate Jews because you said they lied, right? This is getting too obvious. And then Megatron pointed out, I was just mentioned in a thread and couldn't see any value in the Zionist liars harassing and attacking, so didn't like the post, got tested and still shut off. It's everywhere. Here's another one. Sam Parker points out, Twitter breaks promise to reinstate popular gold check account. Defund Israel now. So, well, here's what happened. They got censored. We showed you when it happened. This one first. So here's what they got. Just like we all seen before, your account's been suspended and will not be restored for 1 month. This is the classic, like, social engineering. Like, you've been a bad boy. Go stand in the corner. And when you delete that tweet, we'll let you back in. And you've learned what you did wrong. Like, it's just so creepy the way they do this. If you broke a rule, just delete the thing and tell me I broke a rule, or let me, it's just so dumb the way that they make you do it. But in this case, like, you've been put on a timeout. And it says the account will be restored after 1 month. Very clear. Okay. Well, when that month came around, he got a new notification that said, no, sorry, we're not going to do that. Now your account is gone forever. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that there's all sorts of Zionists that are actively petitioning Elon to do everything all the time. And everything they're doing is effectively changing the outcome of what's happening on this platform. It's not just Zionists, by the way. There's all sorts of interest doing that, but it's clear their outsized influence on everything we're talking about is overwhelmingly obvious. Now, if you're hell-bent on pretending I mean Jewish people when I'm saying that, well, that's your delusion. It's not what I'm saying. It's not what I mean. That's evidenced by the fact that I'll continue to show you a whole lot of Jewish organizations that are actively calling out Zionism, or the fact that Jewish Voices for Peace are constantly chanting for ceasefire while being called, interestingly, not Jewish by most of you guys. So it's just pathetic how I'm the one being called anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic or whatever, while actively fighting for literally anybody being hurt by Zionists. But let's talk about an interesting point that I didn't want to miss before we get into the, I guess we're going to start with the point of Ramadan, and start with, at least in the Israel conversation. This may be nothing, but I found this to be kind of fascinating because it's already being shown to be a lie. Or I guess you could just say that he misreported it, but I feel like there's more to this. At least something tells me, my gut tells me that. Sir Chili Bean pointed this out. We shared this on the 4th. Matt Miller said, we confirmed the death of an American employee inside our embassy. Inside our embassy. Now, of course, you could argue he just meant that works with the embassy, but the way he says it in the clip, which you can listen to, is pretty, it sounds like it was somebody in the embassy, like in the building, right? And we don't have further details this time. So all I'm saying is that it was weird. And Matt Lee pushed back a few times and was like, what was his job? And he said, we can't tell you. It was kind of weird. And they said, we'll tell you more once the family finds out. Well, that was a long time ago, over a week. Here, this was written on the 5th. And it says, an American diplomat found dead in apartment in Jerusalem. Okay, well, that's a little bit different than what we were told, what Matt basically broke down. And the point here, an employee in the embassy in Jerusalem was found dead in their apartment. The State Department said the death of a direct hire employee in the embassy, which is weird they keep using that term. Even Matt Lee pushed back, was like, does that mean American? They're like, yeah, American. It's like, okay, well, they'll just say that. Why? It seems like they're trying to hide that fact, but maybe not. Read it as you see. And then, of course, they claimed there was no indications of foul play, which, I don't trust anything they say, quite frankly. But it says they were not a U.S. ambassador to Israel. So I don't know why they would feel the need to say that, like almost kind of getting ahead of what we might assume, right? We can confirm the death of an American employee in the U.S. embassy. It is not a U.S. ambassador. Foul play is not suspected. Where was the other part? Here's the Daily Mail. U.S. diplomat who died in Jerusalem is named 54-year-old soldier Orlando Bandera. This one was on the 7th of March. Still at this point, no indication. They're still citing in this article that we'll know more once okay, so how long does it take to tell the family? Why aren't we finding out more about this? What's going on? Whenever that's happening, my gut tells me something's being covered up. That's not a fact, but that's what this suggests to me. when it's been this long, we haven't gotten any more details about an American who died in Israel while this has happened. I think that's very interesting. This is what he looked like. Now, when you read this, he seems like he's got a lot of like, here, it's still highlighted. That he has a lot of, like you would suggest, he's been in like a lot of high level stuff, a lot of like secret operations and stuff like that. So why he would suddenly be in the Israeli embassy, it seems interesting. I'm wondering whether or not this was an example of boots on the ground, U.S. personnel fighting and killing Palestinians and died in the process. And they have no other explanation but to just go, well, just pretend he died in the embassy and a non-combat role. Because otherwise we have to admit that what we all know, that they're on the ground fighting, which is provable. It is. There's been countless examples of U.S. troops on the ground fighting. There's a 3-star general, as Axios told us, on the ground advising and helping them pick targets. This is a U.S. war right alongside Israel, guys. There's no way around that. Or U.S. government war. But it says a friend of Bandera wrote on Facebook that he had died in honor of defending our great nation. So it's almost like they suggest he was fighting, right? It says he deployed to Israel, and became an angel to grace heaven with his kindness, compassion, his love. He was a soldier, brave, true to his word, gave 100% to his friends, family, and country. It says he died in honor of defending our great nation. We were roommates, but he died. They're telling you, they're claiming in his apartment. We were roommates for almost 7 years, the friend says. We left behind beautiful daughter, Sophia. Nobody can replace you, Orlando. We love you, bro. It's sad. Man. So, Army Reserve Lieutenant Colonel dies in non-combat incident. Okay, well, already I'm like, non-combat incident does not sound like died in my apartment. But maybe there's just different ways to frame the same thing. You tell me what you think. It says the Pentagon has identified an Army Reserve Lieutenant Colonel who died in a non-combat incident while supporting the U.S. security staff in the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. So again, I get it. I feel like it would make let's just say it's certainly one of the possibilities that this was a combat entity who they just don't want you to know died in combat because they don't want you to fully know that happened. And so they just say, well, non-combat incident in supporting the staff, whatever the ultimate, it's a very opaque statement. He was discovered unresponsive in his residence. The incident is an investigation. What incident? Like, I guess you could, in my experience, you don't usually you don't use the word incident when you just find somebody dead. Incident seems to suggest that like whatever preceded the fact that they found him dead. But, you could just say, of course, they'll already know we're just implying this incident here, this situation, maybe. But I'm telling you, I read this stuff all the time. And in my experience, it's rarely the incident unless it was like the fight before or the shooting before. That's usually and they're calling it a non-combat incident. Again, you could argue that means because he wasn't there for a combat mission, but maybe that's not true. I don't know. It says in January, 3 Army Reserve soldiers died as a result of a one-way drone attack on their base in northeastern Jordan. Again, was it Jordan? I don't know. I know, like we talk about with the fact, like even during Trump's time, but it's happened many times since where you'll have a bombing in Iraq and all of a sudden they're reporting like 20 different traumatic brain injuries. It's like, how does that even possibly make sense? During Trump's time, it was like 100. I am certain people died when that happened. And then we had all these random, they died in a training accident. Oh, they died in a helicopter crash, like all within the weeks following. Call me a conspiracy theorist, plenty do. I'm just pointing out that it's possible. My point is that they always try to hide these kind of things under other circumstances. And I'm wondering whether that's this. Last one, Army Reserve officer in Israel dies in non-combat related incident. And I just wanted to highlight this part. And this is what I was saying earlier. So here's his accoutrement or whatever you call it. That's not the right word. I guess it'd be his. God, I just can't think of the right words today. That's so frustrating. His awards, I guess. I hate that. But it says Bandera's military awards, which that's what it's called, but there's the word I was looking for, includes the Iraq Campaign Medal with 2 campaign stars, Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal, Army Achievement Medal, Joint Meritorious Unit Award, Army Reserve Component Achievement Medal, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Award Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Army Reserve Component Overseas Training Ribbon, Some of them are, seem benign, but some of them seem like, like they're bigger operations. Armed Forces Reserve Medal. For me, it was mostly it was National Defense Service Medal, Korea Defense Service Medal, multiple global war on terrorism deployments, Iraq multiple times. I just wonder why we'd be going to serve in the Jerusalem embassy for minor accolades. Thank you, Kevin. That's what I was looking for. Dang it. Or excuse me, Kaylee Bender gave me that. Thank you. I appreciate that. But so overall, like I said, it could be nothing. Maybe it's exactly what it sounds like, and the guy just died of a heart attack. But why would it be? I don't know. Just everything about it seems like a weird thing. I just wanted to put it out there. And interestingly enough, it does seem like the way it was first stated does not seem like the way it ended up being reported. So I don't know. You tell me what you think. So we're already at about hour 41. So let me see what we'll get to here to finish. Not finish. We got a lot more to go, but ultimately my mind, see if I'm going to cut anything out. Thinking. We talked about the widening narrative gap and the torture. Okay, so we're going to start with Ramadan. And what I want to start with on this in general is, actually, let me just play this video first, and I'll make this statement because I want you to see the context here. Times of Gaza shared this. From the heart of displacement camps, the spirit of Ramadan shines bright in Gaza. Times of Gaza wishes our Muslim community across the globe a blessed Ramadan. Please remember Gaza in your prayers and consider supporting ongoing relief efforts through Care for Gaza is what they wrote. I'm not familiar with the Care for Gaza, so I'm not sure if that's, you guys decide for yourselves. But you should think about this like for let's just say Americans. It's definitely not the same thing, but there's just comparative overlaps. Think of it like Christmas. Okay. Think of it like something that's for the most part, for some people anyway, it's an important religious holiday. And especially in this case, it's far more than what most Americans see Christmas as. This is a very serious, important religious holiday for Muslims. And on that same note, by the way, I've seen a lot of people. I think Eli David, I was looking at his account anyway, and I forget him and somebody else basically going, happy Ramadan to all my Muslim friends. Do not take that as they're being genuine. Quite frankly, I take that as directly being an insult to people. And that's how most Palestinians are taking it, because of what they're allowing and what they're saying about right now they're putting out tweets constantly that pretend that every Muslim is bad and every Palestinian is at fault and they're all responsible and I have no sympathy for you. They're doing that across the board. I'll show you some in a minute. And then going, happy Ramadan. Like it's disgusting. These people are disgusting. But watch this video, and I want to make a comment about this for why this is what they're doing right now while this is happening. Just the point is, they're in these disgusting little tents because that's all they have. I don't mean disgusting inside. I just mean that, they're just like, those look like, no, those aren't USAID, but a lot of these people are just using whatever they can find. Like they were telling us, just also old pieces of plastic and stuff. And they're just making what they can. It's not their fault. They're put in this position, but lights strung up, and they're literally trying to make the best of the most disgusting situation I've ever had to cover in my life. And it's an important day for them. And while it's happening, they're bombing them. They're shooting them. They're attacking them. They're starving them. They did not take the day off or the week off. They haven't done anything different. And in fact, Israel's gone out of its way to say, oh, we're not going to stop. We're going to go even harder. It's the same reason they attack Christians in Syria on Christmas every single year. It's because these people are crazy. And talking about the Zionist government. So it's a very important holiday, right? So I want to talk about this in the context of think about what would happen in any other circumstance. If you had a specific, it's hard to make the same context because it's different of saying if anybody attacked the United States, what the U.S. would respond as. My point would be if you just attacked a Christian country on Christmas, it shows a special kind of hatred, in my opinion. There's no, even at the Civil War, for crying out loud, they took the day off and there's a reason these things are different today is because there's actually a level of vitriol. It's not just hey, we're just fighting for our what we think is right or fighting for our own achievements. And we don't really hate the other side. We just have our odds of our opinions. No, they despise this side. It's very, very clear. But here's what Wall Street Journal put out. While they're experiencing their Christmas or whatever you want to think of it as. And of course, here's the newest co-opted, not smart enough to see through the fact that he's being co-opted, Zionist manipulator, Senator John Fetterman. Because the guy's just saying, I mean, it's just funny how on a dime he starts like screaming about all this pro-Zionist stuff. Is that not the most obvious thing in the world? Even Eli David was like, yay, John can see through it. It looks like he's recovered better than we thought. It's like, he can't even tie his shoes properly, and you're out acting like his opinion now matters on Zionism. Anybody that says what you want to say on Zionism, you're going to pretend they're the best person in the world. He says, of course, Hamas cowards hide in tunnels, hospitals, schools, and refugee camps, now behind a holy time. Oh my God. So the narrative is now that Hamas is using Ramadan as a human shield. So that's why they're bombing on Ramadan. Hey, that's literally what they're saying. It's just, they don't have anything else to do. Human shield, Hamas, you're racist, you hate Jews. It's everything. Throw in the Holocaust here and there. And again, I'm not trying to diminish any of those things that you might take the Holocaust or people suffering. The point is they're using them. They're the ones diminishing these things. They're the ones undermining what they mean and belittling the idea of anti-Semitism or racism or any of it because they don't mean these things. They're using them to defend their crimes, as anybody with a brain can see today. Here he is saying they're using a Ramadan as a human shield, so that means we have to bomb them. Yeah. Hamas must be destroyed, brought to justice, or eliminated. Oh, Fetterman, do you also mean the people in Qatar that they're funding? I guess you don't know about that, right? I wonder why. I fully support Israel's campaign to achieve this. God, it's just so frustrating. People are so blind. And Hamas bets on Ramadan to help it survive Israel's assault. That is what the Washington Post wrote. You are straight up giving the justification to bomb on Ramadan. Wall Street Journal. Not surprising. It is really, really lowbrow. And not only that, you're complicit in genocide on a religious holiday. Is Hamas using Ramadan? No, it's Ramadan. They didn't make it Ramadan, and they're just people celebrating it. And it's incredible that they're now making it the argument that we have to bomb on Ramadan because Hamas is using it. Guys, they've lost the plot. Their own people think this is stupid. They just can't say it publicly. And I know of examples. I don't mean everybody, but even examples of Biden saying outwardly one thing and saying something privately, something very different, or plenty of politicians that have been caught saying the same thing. Here, Uzi Dayan, former Likud member and IDF deputy chief of staff and head of the National Security Council, says, quote, I'm a little sick and tired of Ramadan, a murderous holiday. And therefore, the solution at this stage is a lot of forces, a lot of strength, and little consideration. That was mainstream Israeli media. It's just so grotesque. It is not a murderous holiday. In fact, this is what makes me so sick and tired of people like Loomer and the rest of them. All of Islam, it's all of Islam. They are just parroting what they clearly don't fully understand for whoever's making that happen. Sure, there are all sorts of radical fill in the blank in any situation. Christians, Muslims, Jews. Yeah, they all exist. I know. How crazy is that? To pretend that this one group and this one ideology and that's pure ignorance. It's just so mind-blowing that we have to even continue to argue this. And even though I just said that and started with, yes, there are Muslim radicals, people will pretend the last part means I'm denying that there are. It's just these partisan people are just, not all of them. Some of them are just actually not that bright enough to see through it, in my opinion. Others are vested interests in the narratives. The point here is that you are literally saying this is a murderous holiday coming up to Ramadan, and that we need to not only keep murdering everybody, but give literal consideration that it's even happening. And let's get rid of it. So imagine they came out and said, let's get rid of that murderous holiday, Christmas. These disgusting Christians and all of their righteous crusades, or whatever you want to talk about. It's the same exact thing. I know people are going to go, no, you don't understand Islam, because they're just so completely worked up about something they don't understand. Aired on March 4th. He's not the first one to make extreme statements either regarding Ramadan. This maniac did the same thing. I think Smotrich, right, is his name? Where was it? No, that's not Smotrich. The other guy. That's right. He looks so. It was. Shoot. We do this. It'll probably pop up his first name. Shoot. I want to make sure I give you the full name so you know exactly. Here it is. I'll give you his title. He's the one that said nuke them more than once. Oh, it's Amiha. Wait, have I never said his name out loud? That's crazy. I feel like I've already talked about this guy. Amihai Ilahau. How do you say that? That's a difficult one to say. In any case, the maniac Zionist genocidal Israel Minister of Heritage, which is what we should call him anyway, is absolutely saying not only do we need to nuke them again with the nukes we totally don't have, everybody. So stupid. We need to erase this concept of the month of Ramadan and our fear of this month. The fear of this month. I mean, what's even more incredible about this is during this time frame, it is actually the principle, the practice is to go out of your way to not be violent, just like with any other number of things and other holidays, but they're pretending otherwise. And you'll hear different from maniacs like Loomer and the rest. Here is what they were doing last year. So let's pretend like it's only about October 7th forward, right? Same thing. Remember Ramadan last year? Robert wrote about it. We covered it. This was inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. A mosque, not a synagogue, a mosque. And the IDF was throwing in bombs and gas grenades and all sorts of stuff. And it got worse. They came in, they beat him up. Was that? Because they were praying in there. And by the way, that was completely proven. They made a whole bunch of statements about what they did, and they threw this and threw that. You can use their own videos to prove that didn't happen. They do this every single time. And it's a discussion about the Temple Mount and the prophecies around how this location is going to be destroyed, and how a lot of maniacal Zionists think they're going to rebuild that, and it's going to be the time when they then take over the world, and kind of whatever that narrative is. It's a very easy to look it up. In fact, I don't think I even have it still. What would that be under? I'll look it up later. There was a tweet somebody shared that has an American soldier in Israel fighting on their side. I'm telling you, it's very public. Who has a bunch of patches all over that shows the Temple Mount, which is them. They're saying this is what it's about. This is what it's about. He keeps saying that. That's what they're literally talking about, the reality that this is going to be destroyed, and that's going to be the beginning of Israel and greater Israel and all that, which means Jordan, Egypt, and whoever comes next. So who's really with the plan? After this, they're going to go further. They will say it about Russia. They say it about Hamas. I'll accuse them of that which you are guilty. It's pretty classic. Point is, this is not unique to post-October 7th, but here is what's happening now. If you think this is justified, you think this is okay, you're a disgusting person. There's nothing happening here. There's a bunch of crowded people trying to access a mosque to pray on their holy holiday. And the IDF beats them up. Not only beats them up, like they chase them down, hitting them with batons. These are women and children. And I mean, they're not there violently. Here's Zachary Foster, who I'll grab his interview, by the way, after I play this for you. He says the Israeli military police wishes all Muslims a happy Ramadan by assaulting worshippers in Jerusalem near the Al-Aqsa Mosque, or in the process of going to it is the point. What was the point of that? Okay, just watch that beat. Look at this guy literally beating people in the back. And this guy. Look at this. Why would you do that? These people aren't armed. This is hatred. Hatred for Palestinians on their holiday that you despise. It's pretty simple. Here's my interview with Zachary Foster that you really should check out. He's wildly intelligent. I 100% plan on having him back on again. Zachary Foster, PhD interview. He has his PhD from Princeton in all things Palestine. Very much worth your time. It says the documented and suppressed history of Palestine and Zionism. And he basically backs up everything we've talked about with documented history. But this is what's happening. Here is another example of how it's, long before this. 3 years ago, this article. Don't let Israel tell you that they are bombing Palestinians this Ramadan because of October 7th, which is what they're doing. They're saying Hamas is trying to hide after October 7th using Ramadan. Here's an article 3 years ago from it. Israel does not spare Gaza from strikes, even in Ramadan or any other thing or holiday or anything else that's sacred to other people. Now, Ramadan in Palestine this year. Here's another example of just how wonderful this is for these people.
Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya
Why are they doing that? They're trying to pray. Look at that, guys. I mean, why would you possibly do that? And the point here, guys, the reason they're where they are right now is because they wouldn't let them in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So they prayed somewhere else. And they beat him up and moved him from that too. What this is not religious freedom, right? You are not allowing these people to practice what they want. And they beat him up again. Why? Because they're demanding to be let into a mosque on a holy day. This is not hard to understand, guys. There's going to be Zionists that will scream that we're wrong, but it's easy to prove. And even corporate media has covered this in the past. Not that that makes it true, as always. It shows you that it is mass adoption for whatever reason. Right? What it is, it's hatred. And hear me on this, I'm going to say it every time. It'll be redundant. I do not believe that every IDF member is like that. I do not believe every Zionist is, I will say that because it's certainly an asterisk. But in my experience, I haven't met a Zionist that truly does not embody what we're talking about. But just to be objective, sure, there's probably a Zionist out there that believes there's a way to practice it without doing all this. My point was, though, Jewish person, Israeli person, Christian, whatever we're talking about, I do not believe it's a broad stroke conversation. That has to be understood because there are some people, even in this community, that actually believe that. And, you can think what you want, but I disagree. But there's also people that will hear what I'm saying and think that's what I mean. And it's not the case. And worse than just this, guys, and it's probably already happening for all I know, every single time, and not just on the holiday, there's gangs of illegal settlers, armed settlers that go in with the IDF. And they're the ones that are the worst. I mean, they're vicious. They're the ones that are raping and murdering even what was it? It was BBC. I think a couple of them, they called this out. They were like, they not only are acknowledging it, they're letting it happen. They gave them official capacity and they are murdering people. They're stealing homes. They're raping. It's public. They don't care. And when they rush into the mosque, Al-Aqsa Mosque, they do this in the intention of trying to destroy what they're doing. And then they make plans to storm the mosque. Why? Because it's about the Temple Mount. If you're pretending like illegal settlers plan to storm the mosque because they somehow know that the Palestinians are doing something wrong in the future, then you're ridiculous. They do it because they're trying to keep this unstable. It's the international community and the corporate media that frame this in a way that make people think it's them fighting evil, bad people doing bad things. This is a planned destabilization. They want this place to be destroyed. So that's Ramadan today and ongoing. That's the reality of it. That's what Israel's doing. They're going to lie to you about it, and they're going to pretend they're killing lots of Hamas, as always. And on that note, let's talk about what's actually going on the ground. This is from today. Day 156. Just in the last 24 hours, 8 massacres committed by the Israeli occupation, and with a total of 85 people killed this time in 8 different locations, 130 injured just so far. Day by day by day by day by day. Innocent people. But of course, if you listen to Netanyahu, well, we've had 13,000 terrorists we've killed. 13,000. Well, I mean, let's just pretend that's even true. That still, by the way, does not make sense of anything they're doing. Let's just minus that away. Okay, so that makes it what? 20-something thousand people you've killed? That makes it what? 15,000 children because none of those children were terrorists? Okay, so if you pretend 13,000 people were killed, that still means that you're arguing you've got, 16,000 Hamas members that you want to still kill? And it took 5 months to do 13, so it's going to be that much longer. I mean, it's just a foregone conclusion. One, it's a ridiculous claim to think they killed 13,000 anything other than civilians. Do you think that if they killed 13,000 Hamas and they thought they knew that they wouldn't find a way to parade that in front of you? Guys, they have not killed anybody. I mean, I guarantee that something has been, bombings. They probably killed some Hamas members. But the argument that they've had any effect on this is insulting because, quite frankly, I don't even think they're going after Hamas. I think that's pretty obvious. This is about ethnic cleansing. And whether that's because they are just bombing everybody, including Hamas, or that they actually are maintaining some kind of influence over the entity, I don't know. Like, again, the leadership that's not they're in Qatar, who, by the way, Qatar's part of the negotiation process, and Netanyahu stated in the beginning that he wouldn't go after them in Qatar. That's on the record. How do we not read into that? That's their group that they're funding, and then they outwardly point at them and go, look how rich they are. Look at them over there where we keep them safe. And then look at what he said today. He said they're going to keep doing October 7th. Is that what they said over here in Gaza? No, but he did in Qatar. They're manufacturing all of this, guys. It's obvious. So I don't believe 13,000 people, Hamas members, were killed. I simply do not. But that's what they want you to believe so they can pretend it will keep going. We're doing the right thing. But either way, it proves that they're wrong. But here is the provable reality, despite what Netanyahu screams on a daily basis. This is the plot for the account African Stream says majority of Gaza casualties, women and children. So if we know that, which by the way, it's been proven, Gaza Health Ministry has put the numbers out. The Israeli military has confirmed that those are accurate. If you don't know that, by the way, it's hilarious how these narratives, again, it's indicative of the fact that they have lost so desperately control of this narrative that they just lie. Just with nothing to do, just straight up go, that's incorrect, and even go further. No, they're not starving. They've got lots of food kind of thing, right? The point is the numbers are accurate, and you can prove that 70+% of them are women and children because the UN has confirmed that, the Gaza Health Ministry has said the same, and Israel's military intelligence is using their numbers in their own reports. And on top of even that, not that this is, none of this should necessarily prove, just be another data point, but this is another study from The Lancet, one of the leading platform in scientific groups in the world. But of course, after the COVID situation, we all have a different opinion of a lot of this. But the point is, they did a study, no evidence of inflated mortality reporting from the Gaza Health Ministry. So what really at this point, it's obvious that everything's leaning in the direction that they're telling you the truth. The only thing going in the other way is Eli David saying otherwise. Is Elon Levy saying they're lying. That's it. Literally everything else, including their own statements and the intelligence of Israeli military, are saying that they're accurate. Just so it's clear. So if Netanyahu is saying 13,000 terrorists have been killed, but yet we know that 70% of the total number is women and children, there's a discrepancy there. So obviously the point is Netanyahu is lying. But here's what it says. At a U.S. House Armed Service Committee hearing on the 29th of February, Lloyd Austin, Defense Secretary, seemed to be at pains to justify the continued U.S. supply of weapons to Israel, despite overwhelming evidence indicating that women and children are the majority of victims amid Israel's military occupation. It said operation, but occupation. Lloyd told U.S. Congressman Ro Khanna that 25,000 women and children have been killed in Gaza since October 7th. When probed on whether the United States would consider halting weapon sales in the face of mounting evidence that Israel could be violating international law, could be, or literally is in every possible provable way, Lloyd said that decision was not his to make. Just completely sidestepped the point. And these people are, I think, have been aware for a long time. They're in positions of enough power where they could literally be brought in front of the Hague. They could go to the court to actually be accountable for what they're allowing to happen. So these kind of not my responsibility, not really answering the question, which is what they normally do. But it says the U.S. government has provided the most military, financial aid, financial and political support to Israel than any other country since World War II. Let that sink in. Between the start of the October 7th escalation and late December, the U.S. has sent Israel more than 230 airplanes, 20 ships containing weapons. Further, every year since 2019, the United States has sent $3.8 billion in aid to Israel. Since October, U.S. legislative houses have considered additional aid packages totaling $32 billion. Meanwhile, Washington has vetoed 3 UN Security Council resolutions calling for a ceasefire. Pretty damn obvious.
How many Palestinian women and children have been killed by Israel since October 7th?
It's over 25,000.
Mr. Secretary, last week, the UN High Commissioner...
Real quickly, that is the case. And even their chief ally is telling you that. So if Netanyahu is claiming 13,000 Hamas members, well, he just said Lloyd was lying to you. Or Lloyd said Netanyahu is lying to you. You decide.
Commissioner for Human Rights warned that any transfer of weapon or ammunition to Israel violates international law. About how many precision-guided munitions has the United States given Israel since the beginning of the war?
I don't have that number at my fingertips, but we have endeavored.
Mr. Secretary, it's about 21,000 precision-guided munitions to Israel since the start of the war. Secretary Austin, last week you spoke to Defense Minister Gallant, and you said clearly there needs to be a plan to ensure the safety and support of those sheltering in Rafah before any military operations proceed. National Security Advisor Sullivan has said he has not seen any plan yet. John Kirby said it would be a disaster to invade Rafah. If Netanyahu defies the United States and invades Rafah, will you commit today that you will halt any future military sales to Israel?
Obviously, sir, that's a presidential decision, but we expect that. And by the way, I spoke to Minister Gallant last night, and I expect that when we provide munitions to allies and partners, that they'll use them in a responsible way. So.
But would you make a commitment that they defy what we're saying and they violate international law, by the way, which is opposed to National Security Memorandum 18 and National Security Memorandum 20, that if they don't do what we're saying, that we would halt those arms sales or transfers?
Again, the decision to halt the provision of security assistance would not be mine. It would be...
What would you recommend?
Well, I certainly, again, I really do expect that they utilize the weapons that we provide them in a responsible way.
I mean, think about how stupid that response is. She's asking you, what would be your response? What would be your advisement if they do that? Well, I expect that they're going to do... That's not even like that's not even an answer to the question. Yeah, okay, so you established that. You expect they're not going to, but if and when they might do, hypothetically, in this fantasy world, somebody does, what would you recommend? Well, I expect they're not going to, John. I mean, it's just this stupid constant game that everybody in the room knows what's happening. Everybody watching knows what's happening. He's not very tactfully avoiding answering the obvious question. And this is all that ever happens anymore. It's just so painful to engage with. It's constant. But he knows what he's avoiding. That yes, obviously, because the question implies, or the question highlights that you are violating international law by simply giving them arms. Because actually, I think at least 3 different ways, they're currently violating both international and domestic U.S. law. They don't care. They just don't care because they don't care about any law. That's the point you should start to become aware of. By the way, just really quickly, in case I'm unable to save them, I did the same damn thing tonight. I forgot to save my tabs before I started. So it might be that I missed some of those opening tabs if I can't open them all back up again. But let's keep going and see where we get to. So the point being, they know what's going on. The numbers are accurate. Netanyahu lied. They're just kind of covering it up while keeping it going. That's the worst part about this, is the U.S. government is doing literally nothing to stop this. Now, I think the words that you're seeing outwardly about Netanyahu needs to do this and stop that, it's just nonsense. If they wanted to, they could stop it today. They could stop the funding. They could stop, that's really the main point. If they stopped giving weapons to Israel, they would fail immediately. So likely they would stop what they were doing before that happened. Simple. But instead, Netanyahu acts like he's speaking tough and acts like I think this and he thinks that, and then nothing happens. Oh, by the way, you sent a bunch more weapons today too. Here's the Fox News article. Biden cajoles Netanyahu with tough talk, humanitarian concerns, but Prime Minister remains dug in. Or none of that ever happened, and they're all on the same side. That's what's actually going on. Here's Miss Propagandist Eviva Klampus says Hamas rejected Israel's truce proposal. It wants to drag this war into Ramadan and inflame the entire Middle East. Is that what actually happened? Well, we'll get into that again in a second. No, not even remotely. That's what's so embarrassing about these people is that all they have left is just literally stating the opposite, and hope that you just take that at face value, a la Twitter files. Well, it's written right there on Twitter. It must be true, right? Otherwise, you can find all sorts of evidence that proves she's wrong. But, trust what she said on Twitter, though. But the point is that they did not reject it, obviously, and they're still offering it. Netanyahu is continually rejecting the offer that continues to stand. Netanyahu tries to undermine it with pauses that nobody wants, and they pretend that only Hamas is refusing that. Nope, they're offering right now. And even you wouldn't call it a refusal if they simply rebut with the same offer they had before. So a refusal would be like, no deal. So they're going, okay, no, I rebut with this deal. You could refuse it back and say, no, this deal, or rebut it back. But that's what keeps happening. And the point I'm making is that nobody other than Israel wants a pretend pause, because a pause will lead you right back to where you are now after it ends. And then we'll be back to the same point about we need a ceasefire or a pause before this, and they're going to be dying. And it's the same conversation. And they'll keep bombing until they get pressured again. Why would anybody want that? Other than somebody who wants to keep killing Palestinians and slowly pretend to fight for your own people while possibly killing them in the same point. So that's what's happening. And pretending they want to drag it into Ramadan. Well, the only person doing that is the propaganda machine from the U.S. government pushing that that's what they're using it for. They're hiding behind Ramadan. And the fact that Israel has made a point to say we're going to do it no matter what. But you pretend it's their fault that somehow Ramadan is today or this week. Or I'm not a Muslim, so I'm not sure exactly what I think it actually goes on for a week. I'm figuring out how it goes. But the point is right now, they're in Ramadan holiday and they're acting like it's their fault somehow. But Democracy Now! Points out, while the White House has been voicing concerns over mounting death tolls in Gaza, yeah, they raised the issue, guys. They're concerned, but here's weapons. A Washington Post investigation revealed the Biden administration has quietly approved more than 100 separate weapons sales since October 7th. Well, it's the only thing that's kind of news here is that it was more than 100, which is pretty crazy, and that it was quiet. And so that we know they've been funding and weaponizing them, right? Or giving them weapons. But this came out March 9th. So now we know that you've done a lot more and at the time when most people are aware that this is genocide. So here's what's interesting. So this comes out and voicing concerns was their very mild way, just acting like they care. The next day, Biden has an interview with MSNBC. Guess what he's talking about? Biden says he'll never stop sending arms to Israel for its self-defense. That is literally a reaction to the fact that, in my opinion, that people were seeing the breadth of the real amount. So he went out to act like it's, like triple down, double down. No, it's because self-defense and I'll never stop. But I care about the civilians in Gaza and they need more aid and Israel has to be more careful. By the way, here's more weapons, right? It's just pathetically obvious. Times of Gaza highlights the fact, and this is interesting to me. When you hear when you hear about a car bomb, right? There's a car bomb in Lebanon, or a car bombing, say it that way, car bombing in Lebanon, a car bombing in Syria. Well, the Western world goes, oh, it's probably terrorism. Well, yeah, probably somebody you would, but probably not the person you think though. But get this, there are times of Gaza, there are car bombing by the Israeli occupation in Rafah. The safe zone has led to one casualty. So first of all, the obvious thing is that they're bombing Rafah. So let's realize that whether or not they're telling you they're starting the ground invasion, they have been bombing the only place these people are in without any direction of where they should be going. Is there any indication that car was a Hamas member? No, it is a random individual that got killed. So they're bombing the only area they're collected in, I guess just for fun, just randomly lobbing in bombs and murdering people. I don't know. But what I think is interesting is think about the framing here. You're getting reports of a car bombing, an Israeli car bombing. Well, that's because they're committing terrorism. And that's exactly it's what you hear about. And it's the same concept. So you have a grouping of people and then random bombings popping off. Are they fighting bad guys? No, these are desperate human beings that are suffering. It's terrorism, guys. That's what this is. Cuts News Network points out the U.S. said today it has submitted a draft UN Security Council resolution. This is old, by the way. I just want to read this again. It's from the 6th. Submitted a draft UN Security Council resolution to back an immediate ceasefire of roughly 6 weeks, so a pause, in Gaza, together with the release of all hostages. So that's what the U.S. wanted to support. However, what you don't hear, and this is my point about them claiming like it's Hamas that keeps refusing the ceasefire. So if you only heard that first part, you'd go, well, clearly they want a ceasefire. Hamas must be saying no. But the reality is the proposed resolution for a pause only came after 3 vetoes by the U.S. against resolutions calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. So the reality is literally everybody wants a ceasefire in the UN. All the other parties, and it is Israel and the United States that keep stopping it. U.S. alone continues to veto the ceasefire 3 times. It also comes a few days before the month of Ramadan. So I think it's clear they wanted this to go into Ramadan, which usually sees an escalation across Palestine due to Israel's restrictions on entry to Al-Aqsa Mosque every single time. And then they blame them for trying to go in a mosque. It's just so obvious. So the reality is clearly that they don't want this, and they're pretending like they do while acting like nobody else wants a ceasefire. It's really crazy. So Bangladesh News writes, U.S. renews calls for Israeli restraint amid escalating Gaza crisis. Calls for restraint are, might as well with crocodile tears, whatever you would call it. It's fake. They don't believe it. The Pentagon has warned Israel that it may face strategic defeat if it fails to address the humanitarian crisis unfolding in the devastated Gaza Strip, where intense fighting and significant civilian casualties continue after 5 months of war with Hamas or Palestine. Now, that you'll see what I mean when I read this. That's not because, in my opinion, that they care about the civilian lives. They care about strategic defeat. What they're basically saying is, you're being too obvious with your genocide. If you do that, you're going to lose even if you win the battle. That's what they're saying. Not we care about civilian lives. They've let this go on for 5 months. They don't care. It says President Joe Biden's administration is simultaneously backing Israel's continued offensive in the besieged territory and its security crackdown in the West Bank, which weird how that doesn't get talked about. It's not Gaza. It's not Hamas. And they're just doing the same thing there. So clearly it's about Palestine while expressing concern over the scale of civilian casualties. So backing all the bad stuff by pretending to want to stop it. Alleged war crimes or actual war crimes, and continued expansion of settlements are considered illegal, I just hate the wording. Considered illegal international law? What does that even mean? They are illegal under international law. So saying considered means you're trying to downplay whether that's legitimate. That's a very strange, that's constantly how this works today. But it says this week, Pentagon and State Department spokespeople, both again urged restraint from Israel, which they just don't care and keep going anyway. So that is about showing you that they care or pretending they do. When they stand up and go, Israel, you need to stop and go less on, that's they want you to go, oh, he cares. Well, he's sure trying, isn't he? Well, no, because he later signs a document to give them lots of missiles, right? So clearly they don't care. It's about making you think that they might just actually care about stopping it, and they just are trying so hard, but Netanyahu won't listen, but here's more weapons. It says, though Prime Minister Netanyahu and his emergency wartime coalition cabinet show no sign of easing their goal, right? Their emergency wartime cabinet, which will become the permanent reality for their government forever, pretty much what's going to happen. There's people that are suffering and they need help, the Pentagon spokesperson said. Well, then stop it, man. Then stop arming the murderers who are making them suffer. But they're not going to do that, so they don't really mean that. Quote, we recognize the threat that Israel faces from Hamas, but it's important not to allow tactical victory against Hamas to be replaced with strategic defeat due to creating a situation where essentially Hamas is emboldened and the people of Gaza, the Palestinians who live in Gaza, can't live in peace. They had to squeeze in there Hamas emboldened, because without that, it's clear what you're saying is you're going to hurt these people and you're never going to succeed because the world will see what you're doing. But if you squeeze in bold and Hamas, you could pretend it means, well, we just didn't defeat them. That's why we didn't win. It's a game. You're trying to say it to get us to think it, but then somehow throw a bone to people in Israel that are going to go, okay, good. They didn't really mean that we're hurting them. Gaza, already impoverished by repeated wars and an Egyptian-Israeli blockade since 2007, has been devastated by Israeli responses to Hamas's surprise attack on October 7th. That operation killed 1,200 people. Well, they keep saying that. You realize that the IDF said that very publicly, and I think it went down, at the very least, went down to like 1,100 something. But even after that, I was seeing numbers like 900 something from some of these people. A lot of them turned out to be their own people that they counted as burned bodies. And I think that's why they moved it back to 12, so we would just know people wouldn't talk about it. But it says more than 30,000 people have been killed by Israeli forces. At least 290 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces and settlers in the West Bank. Some 3,450 arrested. 3,450 people arrested from West Bank. Totally about Hamas, right? 247 Israeli defense personnel have been killed since Gaza assault. Most of the 2.3 million people living in Gaza have been displaced. Many moving repeatedly to escape Israel's evolving incursion, which is about to happen again. Even though they're bombing everywhere else too. It's just trying to murder them, guys. Swaths of the territory have been razed. Almost all of it that I can tell. They've just flattened it all for settlements, particularly in the north. Hundreds of thousands have fled to the south to Rafah. Sustained U.S. pressure on Israel to allow more aid to reach Gaza has been only partially successful, which, again, I don't believe they're actually trying. Last week, the U.S. began airdropping supplies, and we're going to get into this next. On Thursday, reports suggested Biden was poised to announce an emergency military mission to establish a port through which more aid can be delivered. But I'm going to show you why this is also an illusion. Guess who's going to be involved in processing it? The Israeli government. It's so stupid. State Department spokesman Matt Miller told reporters on Wednesday, not only is the situation on the ground right now in Gaza unacceptable, it's unsustainable, it can't continue, but here's more weapons. Quote, it's still incumbent upon the government of Israel to do more as well, he added. I can assure you that we are delivering those messages every day. We're raising the issues, guys. We're raising the issues. But as clearly, it says every bit as clearly privately with Israel as well. But we can expect to see action. But here's more weapons, right? I mean, it's the same point. You can't pretend like any of that has any meaning if you're not stopping them from murdering the people who you are now acknowledging you're watching them murder. That's pretty wild. Responding to the news that Israel has approved 3,400 new illegal settler homes. During all of this, in the West Bank, Matt Miller said settlements continue to be a barrier to peace. Okay, so you know they're wrong. You know they're all violation of the law, and nobody does anything about it. So you don't care. So you're lying. Got it. The U.S. is now pressing both sides to agree to a new 6-week ceasefire, which would be a pause, not a ceasefire, that would allow the release of remaining hostages in Gaza. Israel is reportedly backing the proposal, which is not actually true, but Hamas is still demanding a permanent ceasefire. Oh, I'm sorry. I said it backwards. Israel is on the side of the pause. But Hamas is demanding a permanent ceasefire, but Hamas is offering what everybody wants, including Israeli families. Let's talk about that. Now, first, again, to highlight the reality of this, here's the same one I showed you the other day, Hen Mazig, saying, what if one of them was your daughter, your sister, your niece? The IDF members he's showing down below, which are provably all IDF members who were taken, not to say it's okay that they were harmed, or any other thing that might have happened, but they were legal targets for an armed resistance per the Fort Geneva Convention. It's easily proven, international law. What if they were your sister, your niece, your friend? He says, what would you do to bring them home? Would you do whatever it takes? Well, as Kim Iverson commented down here, well, I sure wouldn't kill lots of children, right? That's a good point. But my point about this was, well, you know who is not doing, quote, whatever it takes? Netanyahu. He repeatedly refuses the complete hostage exchange for all the hostages, offering instead the short, temporary pause. They've offered a full exchange since the first week, according to Associated Press. He only offers the partial pause and exchange. So clearly, Netanyahu is not doing whatever it takes. It's like you're clearly pretending Israelis are trying to do. No, they're not. You refuse them to take them home over and over and over. Here's the article you can read for yourself. Oh, actually, I think I got it right there. Yeah, it's already over there. No, the point is, full ceasefire, all hostages. Netanyahu says no. We're insisting on total victory. So let's reiterate that point again for those who don't remember how clear this actually is. October 19th. This is an article about where they were at the time. Here's what it said. The Israeli military has a green light to move into Gaza whenever it's ready. It says hostages and civilian casualties will be secondary to destroying Hamas. That was the economy minister. He says, quote, we shall do all efforts to bring our hostages back, he said. First and last priority is destroying Hamas. So you can pretend they care. I clearly don't believe that. The Hannibal directive is obvious. But the point is, they very clearly told you that the people that Hen Mazig pretends they're fighting for were secondary to the war, which in the process of the war, they're being killed. I just don't know how you can't make sense of that to the average person. Here's another article. This one is from February 20th. Smotrich says, releasing hostages, not top priority. The minister says the destruction of Hamas and winning our war comes first. That's not what we're being told. When I point at this and I say, well, hey, he's not doing everything they can, and you're telling us that's all that matters, and you're not taking, and you're lying about them taking a hostage deal like if Klompus did over there, then you guys know what's going on. You know you're letting people die. You know you're doing something other than fighting for these women that you're otherwise using to emotionally manipulate people that don't know that, which makes you especially disgusting. Here's a Times of Israel article. Smotrich says, bringing hostages home, quote, not the most important thing. It's not hard to understand. Sparking outcry with who? Israelis. Their families they've been storming the Knesset, their Congress. They've been protesting out front Netanyahu's house. And yet we get shouted down for racist for admitting what other Israelis are saying. Here's another article. This one's from PBS. Goes back to March 6th. Not very long ago. Hostage crisis poses dilemma for Israel. Offers path of victory for Hamas. Says, over the last 5 months, Israel's killed thousands of Hamas fighters. I don't know if I believe that. Destroyed dozens of their tunnels. I don't know if I believe that. But it says it still faces a dilemma. That was clear from the start. Well, to people with a brain, apparently. That and will ultimately determine its outcome. It can either try to annihilate Hamas, which would mean almost certain death. Yep. For the estimated 100 hostages, we're already seeing it happen, still held in Gaza, or it can cut a deal and allow them to come home. So this is my point. That was the obvious dilemma, and they told you they're not important. The hostages are not the most important thing. A literal quote from the far-right minister in Israel. Why are we even debating this stuff? It's so frustrating, is it? Okay, so the point is that's obvious. That's clear. So when they're going, we want a ceasefire, and Israel goes, no, we want to pause. This is the way you should read that. Israel says, okay, how about you give us back all the hostages, and then we start ethnically cleansing you again in a month. Hamas says, well, no, the ceasefire needs to be permanent. Israel says, Hamas rejects the ceasefire over and over and over. But the point on top of that is there are actually people who listen to the Israeli politicians who heard him say, not the most important thing. Right? So here they are going, we just heard you turn down another ceasefire. We're at 5 months now. We've seen 30 plus of our own people killed because of your bombings. They're not on his side anymore. He's rejected it time and time and time again. Here is what Marav Zons, I forgot how to say her last name. I looked it up the last time. Zonseason. She's a senior Israeli analyst, Washington Post and other platforms, 972 magazine. It says, this is from October 28th. So this is back towards the beginning of October 7th forward anyway. She says, representatives of families of the hostages who just met with Netanyahu say they demanded of him that he agree to Hamas terms to free all hostages for prisoners. Everyone for everyone. You know why? Because that was offered in the first week. This is October 28th. Right? So we're 3 weeks past the start of October 7th forward. Haven't I been saying that from the very beginning? Because it's the truth. And the families know that. So in fact, the only person in this dynamic that's fighting for the families, the Jewish Israeli families, is me. Not Netanyahu, not Hen Mazig, me. I'm the one going, yep, I agree. We need to get your families home. Yet they call me racist for saying ceasefire or Jewish Voices for Peace. And by the way, I don't mean that I'm the only one in the entire, just in this conversation between Netanyahu and myself, but realize how crazy that is. Here's The Guardian. Silence for months. Arab Israeli towns hold first Gaza war protests. So there's people protesting within Israel proper and elsewhere. And by the way, not just Arab Israelis, but all sorts of Jewish Israelis. And they get beat up for it. They get arrested for it. There was a teacher that lost his job and got arrested and held indefinitely for, like, not indefinitely, but that, without charge for months. He got released. He talked about it. He said they basically tortured him. It's just crazy. He's an Israeli Jew. Here is what Netanyahu's lying about. So you just saw what I started with. It's obvious, undeniable facts based on statements from Israeli ministers, from the international community. This is my point, though. So that's a static reality we can all see. He just comes out and just says the opposite. And here's what's crazy. While he knows Israeli families don't agree with him, here's what he said.
Well, I don't know exactly what the president meant. But if he meant by that I'm pursuing private policies against the majority, the wish of the majority of Israelis, and that this is hurting the interests of Israel, then he's wrong on both counts. Number one, these are not my private policies only. They're policies supported by the overwhelming majority of the Israelis. They support the action that we're taking to destroy the remaining terrorist battalions of Hamas.
They really don't. Very, very, very publicly, you can tell that. Very publicly. What you'll get is the Elon Levies and Eli Davids of the world that get framed as all of the people. It's not the reality. They're not. I don't even know if they're even in. The point is, you can clearly prove that a huge portion of the Israeli population very clearly don't want Gaza to exist, but it first and foremost want everything to stop so their families can come home. They're human beings with concern for their families. Very clear. He does not have the support, yet what is he going to do? He has to convince the American audience that he does. That's the point.
They say that once we destroy the Hamas, the last thing we should do is put in Gaza, in charge of Gaza, the Palestinian Authority that educates its children towards terrorism and pays for terrorism. And they also support my position that says that we should resoundingly reject the attempt to ram down our throats a Palestinian state. That is...
yeah, in case you didn't miss that, yeah, that's the whole two-state solution lie that Blinken keeps pushing, that anybody out there, like, what's her name with the purple hair, that ridiculous older politician that we pointed out, who doesn't even seem to understand what word she's using. The point is that they're all going to say solution is how we're going to fix. Well, look, I'm all about, if everybody was on the same page, I mean, basically the Israeli government, clearly, because Palestinians have been committed to that possibility for a long time now, but now clearly it's off the table because of Israel. But if it was possible, well, sure, it's certainly something that would achieve some level of peace if both sides were actually interested in allowing that. Now, the only thing stopping it is the fact that Israel doesn't want them to have Gaza and the West Bank. And again, if you can't tell that by now with what's currently happening, that they've never wanted to lose those two things, then you're not paying attention. That's the reality. The argument that it's somehow Palestinians only wanting all of Palestine, which is part of the conversation, is not the real shifting dynamic here. Because for a very long time, the most prominent elements in the Palestinian resistance side have been in line with wanting some level of statehood and self-determination, even if that meant giving up some of what was originally Palestine. It's easy to prove. So right now, he's telling you, shoving down our throat the two-state solution. So what's crazy about that is right this moment, your politicians are acting like that's what's really happening. That's how we're going to solve this. We all agree. And that it's only Israel on our side. It's the dangerous Palestinians that don't want that. They're really talking like that right now. That is how shockingly uninformed some of the politicians are, but more so the two-party illusionists who listen to them.
Something that they agree on, and it's something that I think is also for the interests of Israel, because the majority of Israelis understand that if we don't do this, what we'll have is a repetition of the October 7th massacre, which is bad for Israel, bad for the Palestinians, bad for the future of peace in the Middle East. So the attempt to say that my policies are my private policies that are not supported by most Israelis is false. The vast majority are united as never before, and they understand what's good for Israel.
That's actually what he says in the tweet itself. Most Israelis support the policies I lead. The vast majority is would it be is or R? That's really R. I think it's R. I guess it kind of goes either way because you're speaking as like a whole. Either way, united as never before. It's just not true. But Zionists will scream, that's the truth. And then they'll shout you down as a racist for anybody saying otherwise because it's blood libel or whatever. That's how the game goes. The truth is there's evidence everywhere and then statements and accusations of racism. Not to say that it might just not be an overlap of both. Somebody might just be a racist, but also acknowledging you're lying. My point is that you're not immediately racist because you acknowledge that you're lying. I know, it's crazy, right? Here is Elon Levy, Mr. October 7th spokesman forever, says, powerful. I don't really know why. It's a former hostage saying, if you have a shred of humanity, release the hostages. I don't know why that's powerful. It's a pretty benign statement. If it was some crying, momentous thing, it's because he just wants you to go, oh my God, this is so important. He's a propagandist. That's what he does. He's really bad at it. But here's what's interesting about this. This is one of the people that already came out and said the opposite of kind of what is now being said. Saying, this is the one that said they treated women are like queens. They gave her a beautiful nickname the point is, and I'll play a clip for it in a second with some of those. This is Corrine sharing this. She goes, she changed her testimony many times after the Israeli PR team fed her the script. That's what she's saying anyway. A few weeks ago, she was giggling about a nickname and saying Hamas treats them like queens. So it clearly just shifted, right? Point though, all that being said, and I'm convinced very clearly that that's now 3 people that came out and said a very specific thing about how it was not bad, and now have weirdly shifted, but not in narratives you would expect. Not, no, they raped me, but like, well, he wanted to, I could tell. It's like, well, how do you go from they treated me really kindly and they was really nice and they gave me food to, yeah, I kind of think he wanted to. That sounds like they were coached, in my opinion. But that's not the point of this. This is Agam Goldstein. Now, if you notice, she's standing in front of a podium that says, bring them home, right? Now, you wouldn't say, Hamas, bring them home. I mean, you might, but it's, release them. Bring them home is speaking to somebody there, like Israel, my government, bring them home. And that's the point they keep making, is they keep using the people who are in fact calling them to do something. It's not always the case. There are some of them that are standing up and saying, Hamas, you're bad, but there's a lot of them that are, in fact, petitioning the Israeli government. They're speaking up and saying, bring our hostages home, or protests where they're marching down the street saying, bring them home. And they're speaking to the Israeli government. That what they mean is take the offer, bring them home, stop what you're doing. Not in every case, hear me on that, but some of them, and I've shown you some of them. So my question here is she saying, Hamas, if you've got a shred of humanity, release the hostages? Or is she saying, Israel, if you've got any humanity, bring our people back? I don't know. You can decide for yourself. It's in Hebrew, so I won't play it, but you can listen to it if you understand Hebrew. The point, though, is that very clearly, most of them we can prove do not think that they should be waiting, but should accept a ceasefire. And so what does that ceasefire amount to? Well, bringing everybody home. So that's an obvious dynamic. So to pretend that not calling for ceasefire is the best way to save those people is the most perverse inversion of reality, like everything else they're doing. We demand they surrender. I mean, he just admitted in an interview that he knows that's not going to happen. The guy's like, come on, man. You know they're not going to surrender. They know that, guys. They know that. It's basically a way to convince you or give you a talking point to convince others to just keep it going. Now, here is a quick little point from a CBC News opening. Anyway, I don't play the whole thing. Biden voices frustration with Netanyahu. Now, this is what Netanyahu was essentially responding to.
Took to the streets of Tel Aviv last night, protesting against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government and demanding a deal to release the remaining hostages.
See?
Those talks around a ceasefire are still happening this weekend, according to Israel's intelligence agency.
But that's not even true. Israel didn't even send a delegation the last time. So they clearly want these people to think that they're doing that. Meanwhile, they're otherwise telling some people they're not. It's just everything they do. Look, I'm going to play this clip just because it's perfectly timed. Everything they do is a lie.
Let me preface these remarks with I never, ever believe Israeli figures. I've been in the government too long to know that the Israelis are patent liars in their intelligence community, in their propaganda community, certainly, and in their leadership. They are inveterate liars. Let me say that again. They are liars. So you can't believe anything that comes out of Jerusalem. It's all propaganda.
Yep. Not hard to understand. So when she's saying, oh, I'll play a little more on that, I think, openly telling you they're massive protests. And that's just one she's highlighting. Do your due diligence, guys. They're everywhere. Look in Hebrew channels, and it's constant. There's Telegram channels and whatever else. People are outraged that they're not taking their families back, even though they've now gotten wind of the fact that they have been offered multiple times, and because they're watching shows like ours.
The U.S. had hoped to see an agreement by the start of Ramadan. Preparations for the holy month are underway in Gaza, despite ongoing fears of an Israeli offensive in the southern city of Rafah. The U.S. and allies, including Canada, have warned Israel about moving forward with that latest ground offensive. And now, 5 months into this war, President Biden is being more open about his frustration with Netanyahu. For more on that U.S. response, I'm joined by former U.S.
I don't believe it at all. I don't believe that Biden, that's the game being played. It might be being used to kind of maybe pressure Netanyahu in a way they want, but not in the interest of saving people. Otherwise, they would just stop what they're doing. It's very clear. But so the overall point to take from that is, one, that even Biden's admitting that that's happening and the people are protesting. Is everything Netanyahu just said is false. And that's not hard to understand in a larger sense. It's constantly happening. Here's the CNN article. Oh, of course, this took it away too. Oh, no, there it is. Oh, it's a new update. That's why. Netanyahu says Israel will move forward with invasion of Rafah. Of course he will. I sadly always knew that was going to happen. Based on everything else that's happening, it's clear Netanyahu does not care what they tell him to do. Now it says this is a CNN kind of breakdown on the time zone, the live updates. It says Hamas political chief says group still open to Gaza truce talks. Right, which again, that's always been the case. They have the full ceasefire and full hostage exchange. Those are the absolutes, but they're open to any other, what else, give me a deal. It's just anybody that's logical and not looking through the lens of Hamas terror versus Israel good guy is going to see that just on a logic kind of like deal basis, that it makes no sense to argue for a temporary anything, because obviously what they need and any kind of a deal, there's obviously something both sides trying to achieve. And that's what they're trying to reach. If your proposed deal completely excludes the only thing they're trying to achieve, well, why would they accept that deal in any context? That's what's happening. Hamas is obviously the interest is of stopping the problems, which is people starving to death, people being murdered in real time. And so that's what they're asking for. And the point is that Israel has to deal. That's where the negotiation comes in. It's like, for example, Israel's not going to accept that they would just take over all of Israel, right? Like there's specifics that they will always demand. But stopping the actual exchange only shows you that they don't want their people back. Or at the very least, it's secondary to the ongoing war, which means the same thing as far as I'm concerned. But it says that he also insisted that a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and the withdrawal of all Israeli forces is the only way forward to an agreement. This is the Hamas representative. It says he claimed that Israel, quote, has so far evaded giving clear guarantees and commitments, especially on the subject of a ceasefire. That is, stopping the aggressive war on the Gaza Strip. He also said hostages in Gaza will not be able to return home without an agreement. It's very clear. Here is NBC News saying Israel-Hamas war, live updates. Netanyahu rejects Biden's criticism that he's, quote, hurting Israel, and says policies have support of most Israelis. Same point. But, everyone's, highlighting the fact that now even Biden clearly trying to gain support up in the election while still funding with here's still weapons, right? But hurting Israel. What does that say, though? This is the crux of the point. What he's telling you is that he sees, or he's at least highlighting for some that can read through the lines, that he does not have the support of Israel. That's why Netanyahu felt the need to stress that lie. All of it's falling apart at the seams. And it gets even more disgusting when you realize how obvious the Hannibal Directive truly is, which then seems to make sense of the fact that they don't care about their hostages. In fact, there's a reason that they don't want them back. If you don't understand the Hannibal Directive, make sure you do your due diligence. It is simply a directive that was put in place in past policies because Israel was embarrassed by having to exchange for a hostage. So they made a policy, and you can look this stuff up. It's not a secret. Sort of like the mowing the grass directive. It's very real. It means they just go in every now and again and murder a bunch of Gaza people. It's what they do. It's been done many times. But the point in this is that they would then, going forward, if they've got the opportunity, shoot the hostage. So they couldn't be used against the state of Israel. I know that sounds disgusting and crazy, but now it makes more sense for those that haven't heard that for why they're killing children, killing everybody. This is who they are, the Zionist government. And that's also why a lot of IDF people, when confronted with what they're doing, they're the ones speaking out about it. The guy that I've showed you before saying, I had my gun aimed at a child and I realized I was the bad guy, right? And those are human beings with a soul. But Marav Zonzine, what did I say last time? Zonzine, same one from 972 magazine. She writes, a scathing report in independent Israeli site exposes that 10 hostages were killed by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. Some even as IDF had intel that they were residing in the buildings that were targeted. The IDF reported that they died in Hamas captivity. Guys, this is one of the connected pieces that truly show you that they know they're there and killed them anyway. How is that not Hannibal directive? And some of these faces you've seen. Guys, these are the people we keep showing you, especially these three at the bottom. They keep pretending that those are the people that, well, in some cases, are the ones that got shot, but in some cases, the ones that they claim are still alive. And they keep using them to emotionally manipulate you, even though they've killed them and they know that. How do you not, does not make your skin crawl? Now, this was, I didn't go into this today. I think I really plan on, I say that a lot, and it doesn't always mean I'm going to, by the way. Stuff happens the next day and I get distracted, but a lot of stuff I want to go in deeper and kind of do focus on it. This I really do want to, because this is an interesting, I hadn't seen this before this. It's an older one. This is not like super old, but it's February 21st when she posted it. It's in Hebrew. That's why I didn't see it, right? So I definitely want to go over this in a future date. But an Israeli reporter telling you that an Israeli outlet told us that they killed their own people and that they knew that. And again, we don't need it. This is our 972 magazine already broke the story about the mass assassination factory, showing you that they were using their AI process to murder people and that they knew that. Read it for yourself. Here is the Guardian breaking down the point we've already shown you many times. This is from March 3rd, saying, quote, we were constantly in terror. Israeli hostage tell of captivity in Gaza. Might be thinking, oh my God, they were scared of Hamas. No. In fact, you very clearly, oh wait, I swear I grabbed this already for the podcast. It's on the way. For those that don't know, you can get past a paywall by using the archive. I did this already. How crazy. So if you read into it, the point is they were terrified of being killed by the IDF, which those that watch the show already know that. We've covered it many times. Find the spot. What was it? Oh, what? Oh, shoot. I hit the wrong button. Sorry. Here we go. How does that keep happening? For those on the video version, oh, I see. The little window moves. What is that about? There we go. Yeah, so right here, it says the family was moved repeatedly from tunnels to apartments. And don't forget that point. I've already shown you this, by the way. That the point is that they're bombing all sorts of buildings and all sorts of, donkey carts. We keep seeing that. Well, they were on apartments. They were on donkey carts. So are they trying to kill them or are they just being that indiscriminate? And the point is, either way, it's obvious that they're probably killing them right now. And it says, Alba Goldstein was more worried at times that she and her daughter and her son, I think, would be killed by Israeli offensives than by their captors, who once even shielded the family with their bodies from shrapnel. Like, try to reconcile that with the story we're being told. It's just so crazy. The point, though, they are trying. I mean, they're more at risk right now because of what they're doing, the bombing campaign in Gaza and the hostages that I'm talking about. Just like we're seeing here. The 10 that were killed on top of everything else we know. Now, just to play this video again, as Saeed writes, Zionists hate this video, just to show you how different it is than what we're now being shown by some of these people. This is what many, and this isn't even all of them, but this is what many of them did or said or acted like when they came out of their hostage situation. Now, the obvious point can be made that, you know, one of two things. Either Hamas was pretending to be super nice just around these people, so when they let them go, they look nice. I mean, that's guessing possible. Or they were acting kind because they were still afraid. But none of that makes sense to me. None of that adds up. How many things we've seen, all the laughing, and like, it just doesn't line up. It just doesn't. They were very kind to me. She later said that she was the one that later said that they looked like they wanted to rape me. Like, how did that even line up? There's some of this stuff. There's something very wrong going on. We all see it. And here is the Aviva Klumpus highlighting. So basically, this is the point. So this is the information coming out, right? They're deliberately killing their own hostages. We all see it. And then Miss Propaganda comes out and says, the jihadi death cult psychopaths, just like Hamas terror dungeons. It's like you're just cartoonish in the way that you do this. You could just call them terrorists, right? That's enough for most people. But it says, have released a new video claiming more Israeli hostages were killed in captivity. It's crazy to me. This is a provable reality that even Israel has admitted to, shooting them, bombing them. And people that have come home have told us that they saw hostages killed by IDF bombings. And we just read one that told you they were worried from it. But they have to come in and go, it's all fake. This jihadi death cult psychopath, they're claiming that they killed by captivity, but it says, or killed while kept in captivity by IDF bombings. It says, and somehow there are people out in the streets of the capital cities at this moment marching for the murderers. So her point is to not tell you that they were killed by IDF bombings, but that they were killed because Hamas was the way she writes it doesn't necessarily say that it was Hamas that killed them, but this is how they're letting you assume that, because most of their ridiculous followers will assume into whatever they place in front of them. That's how that works. But as I said, well, here's the article, by the way. Hamas claims IDF fire on Gaza killed 7 hostages in psychological terror. The psychological terror was the example of these older men that were super scared. And, the point is, it's a provable fact, guys. And I simply said, why is this difficult for some to grasp? Refusing the repeatedly offered full hostage exchange almost guarantees ongoing Israeli bombing will kill more of their own. And many have even admitted to it. And yet we have to act like it's fake because propaganda. The reality is, as you could prove, they've killed more hostages than they've rescued. I don't think they want to rescue any of them. I think that was circumstance or an IDF member that didn't know they were supposed to kill them. I know that's harsh, guys, but there's evidence. Now, because Eli David had me blocked, I wanted to show you this to start this point about Rafa, because he's still out there propagandizing. And again, the reason he blocked me or whoever is because he looks stupid. It's not that it's just because it's easy. It's not necessarily to say that I'm that good at it, but you guys can say that. Okay. The point is that it's just because it's so easy to break this stuff down. The reality of, like, Netanyahu saying they all support me. It takes 10 seconds to prove that's not true. So here's Eli David preparing the narrative for murdering civilians in Rafah, because that's his job, apparently. Because Biden, there's a Biden article that says, Biden warns Netanyahu that Rafah invasion's a red line. Well, you mean genocide and 30,000, 15,000 children, that's not a red line? Okay, I guess red lines are different for everybody. But it says, by Biden, hostages are held in Rafah, including U.S. citizens. How in the world do you think you know that? No, where is that claim even coming from? That's my point. This is just, he's probably given agency just to say whatever. Like, here's a bunch of bread that they have, it's overflowing, or here's all the trucks backed up. They just lie and lie and lie and lie over and over. So we're to pretend that Rafah was the safe zone, right? That they promised was safe. So that means they're arguably keeping it safe. We know that's not what's happening, but that's what they're supposed to be doing. So when you're moving people into a humanitarian zone, that's your responsibility to keep it safe. And everybody in the world knows that. So they moved them into Rafah, which before it was Khan Yunis and before it was something else. And every time it's been the same. Oh, now where you are is where the bad guys are. So do you mean they somehow got past your cordoned off area? Even though they're still firing from the north, but you just told us the north is completely safe. Like, it's crazy what's going on. This is just a narrative. They're bombing civilians in Rafah. And now they're going, oh, there's hostages there. Ooh, there's terror tunnels. Oh, there's bad people there. Then why did you put them there? Or are you telling us that they got through what your protection was, or was it not protected? He says top Hamas terrorists are hiding there. Okay, where's the evidence for any of this? Give me something. Did IDF say so? Now, even that wouldn't be evidence, but he's not even saying that. I have not seen any claims anywhere. Hamas rejected all ceasefire and hostage deals. That's what he just said. So we know that's a lie from just what we've talked about. No, they didn't. They're offering a ceasefire deal. So when you pretend they reject all ceasefires, you're lying. But he knows he's lying. That's the best they can do. He says, are U.S. forces going to rescue the hostages there? Yes. Go ahead. No. Then let Israel do the job. You mean the job that is murdering them? The job that is literally taking all their lives? Or the job that means they're not even trying to do that? Like, it's just disgusting. So these guys know that they're doing that and are still acting like they're fighting for the people that are, I wouldn't even call them their people in whatever sense. Eli David cares about Jewish people or Israelis, but realize he knows at some level what they're doing is going forward. And he's trying to pretend like stopping this so we can keep trying to save them, even though they'll tell you, if you ask them, that's not the most important thing. Think about how dumb that is, how disgusting that is. Here's the actual tweet link if you want to respond, since I can't anymore. Here is The Intercept. Leaked U.S. cable. Israeli invasion of Rafah would have catastrophic humanitarian consequences, which we all know. Bangladesh News. I'm just going to play this clip. There's a bunch to read here, but I'm getting close to my mark where I feel like I'm going to end here. But let's just play this clip really quickly because it's interesting. This guy really does rattle off a bunch of important stuff. And it's not, I don't think he's telling Piers Morgan to shut up. I think it's the guy he's so-called debating. But it's just because the guy's trying to shout him down for saying things we can prove.
Can you shut up so that I can speak? Shut up, please. I want to say that what you see in Gaza now is an act of genocide because 12,000 children have been killed. And these are not 19 years old. These are 5, 6 years old and 3 years old and 2 years old. These are children, for God's sake. I am against the killing of 30 Israeli children, which happened on the 7th of October, because they are children and civilians. But nothing in the world could justify, because of the killing of 30 children, the killing of 12,000 other Palestinian children. That is unacceptable. You should look at the real figures. 30,000 Palestinian civilians have been killed, and 72,000 people have been injured by the Israeli murderous army. This is 4.5%.
I'm pretty sure that's Dershowitz, by the way. I can't see his face, but that's his little whiny, squeaky voice.
Of the population. Hold on. I did not interrupt. 30,000 Palestinian civilians have been killed, and 72,000 people have been injured by the Israeli murderous army. This is 4.5% of the population. Hold on. I did not interrupt you, so shut up and let me finish. 4.5% of the population of Gaza have been killed or injured. If that had happened in the United States of America, you would be talking about 12 million people killed or injured in 4 months of time. Is that acceptable? And mostly civilians, 70% are civilians. More than that, Israel is killing Palestinians not only with this terrible genocide with their bombardment, they are killing Palestinians with starvation. This terrible siege, 50,000 pregnant women, Palestinian women, don't find a place to give birth in. 64,000 breastfeeding women cannot help their babies. And more than that, 700,000 people are now starving because Israel is preventing milk, flour, food to the population of Gaza City and the north of Gaza. And more than that, they shoot the Palestinian hungry people when they are trying to get some food.
Okay, Mr.
They shoot them and kill them like they did 2 days ago.
Mr. Balgucci,
by
let me ask you a question.
100 people and 860 others were injured. So my response to you, yes, this is genocide. These are 3 war crimes happening at the same time. Genocide, collective punishment, and ethnic cleansing. At the same time, 70% of all homes were destroyed. All universities were destroyed. 30 hospitals out of 36 hospitals were destroyed. 347 of my colleagues, medical doctors,
Mr. Balgucci,
I mean, what can you possibly say to that? I mean, that's not even all of the information. How can you possibly try to, with a straight face, pretend that all of that is going after Hamas? It's just pathetic, and everybody sees it. That's why this is so important, but also so damaging for their narrative, for their control structure. Just so we realize, I said earlier, they have already been bombing Rafah. Okay, so despite all the narratives about what their plan will be and the about to invade Rafah conversation, you're already bombing the civilians who are there. There's no conversation about that in the corporate media. So it just shows you there's already still blind spots, though they're not really being honest about this. And this is in Rafah. This was posted on March 4th. It says in Rafah, the southmost part of Gaza Strip, the number of casualties from the bombing of 2 homes rose to 19. Earlier this morning, reported that 7 Palestinians, including children and women, were killed with dozens wounded. Nobody even talked about that. Here is CNN on February 12th. Israeli airstrikes killed more than 100 in Rafah as international alarm mounts over anticipated ground offensive. Just constant. No one's talking about the reality that they're bombing into it's a fish in a barrel. They don't have anywhere else to go. They're up against the wall. They're getting shot if they go back in the north. They're bombing in the area with no other plan. What's the difference between the ground invasion versus the constant bombing? You're already attacking them in there. There should be a plan currently. The point is they don't care. The plan is to kill them. Here is what this woman is describing, what she saw at the Al-Mawasi safe area, which is this is the same conversation. Is saying that there was 13 civilians murdered. She said a missile fell. Women and men began screaming out of panic. They started yelling for help. People started running out of the tents. Shells were landing on them again. Then I went back there. Then there was those daughter who was disabled who wanted to get out. He wanted to take her to the wheelchair, and then they bombed him. So realize what we're talking about here, guys, is they're bombing the area, and there are people shooting them also as they run out of the tents. How in the world do you think that lines up with anything other than assassination? A deaf girl came out, my daughter came out, and they bombed her. A missile hit her as you will see. We were all in the tents. We were all in farms and greenhouses. In a tent, a fire suddenly broke out. It says in a second greenhouse, people started running. Then they were hit with bombs as well, killing the girls. The father had already been injured to his head. There was blood on the pillow and the mattress. Then they bombed and killed 3 of his daughters. The 3 girls were martyred and were killed. Jesus. The first father, then the 3 daughters. They were sleeping peacefully. Supposed safe zone. The boy was also killed here. They also dropped a shell on him, and he was killed here. Another boy was killed here, next to each other. That's the safe zone. It's just, it shouldn't even be surprising. It's provable on a daily basis, and your government doesn't care. Wherever you are, it seems, unless you're in Yemen. Now, Face the Truth includes just a point I'll just include for you. I'm going to rapidly go through the last part, just about the fact of the dynamics of Rafah, the reality of what they're dealing with right now, and how they've been kettled and condensed into a very, very, very small area. And the reality being that they're suffering right now, let alone when they start invading and the continuation of the bombing. Now, I want the image I used, I wanted to make a point about today. In fact, actually, I'll bring that up so you can see it right now in case you didn't see the opening. It was the image from this article, in fact. Which, now, just so you know, I actually wouldn't have used this if this was a real situation, just because I wouldn't have been comfortable with it. But this was a guy doing a protest. Now, the argument is that he was claiming this is what Israel had done to him, and he was protesting it publicly. So, nonetheless, the point is I used that as a display to kind of make a point, to show you. So let this, the analogy here, whatever you would call it, is the guy is Gaza. That's what they're dealing with right now. Right? U.S. aid, in quotes, is this ridiculous, wildly, not even uncomfortable, like meant to be uncomfortable chair, or meant to be painful chair. Hey, but you got a chair to sit on, right? Like, that's kind of the dynamic. It's like, this will help you. Sit on this chair that only makes it wildly more painful. Like, that's what their aid is doing. And then there's Israel in the background just laughing about it, the whole thing. Meanwhile, having all the power to stop it at any moment. That's what that is. Now, Philip Lazzarini, as I pointed out before, made the statement that UNRWA was unable to deliver food into Gaza, and the last time they had done it was on January 23rd. Now, I haven't seen if they've gotten some sent I haven't been able to suss out whether the funding has even truly started again. There was the IDF came out with that new push about the lie of 450 people, and they kind of got quiet again. And they're such cowards. They're about to fund them again because clearly there was all these lies. And I think I even included the. No, I couldn't grab those. Let me grab those real quickly. Oh, I'll just do this one. I don't remember what the other one was. So there was the U.S. government spoke up, and so did Canada. They still haven't seen the intelligence linking UNRWA with Hamas. That's right up to today. Like, they have no evidence to back up what they're claiming, even though Israel screams that everything's been proven. All the rape allegations. Nope, has not. You guys are lying about all of it, and you could prove that now. The point here is to say that Lazzarini hadn't made public that they hadn't brought any food in since the 23rd. Now, again, my point was, like, I don't think anything's still happened since then. I think it's all been facilitated by airdrops and faux efforts by Israel to shoot people or other groups, because there are other, I think even the World Food Program has started again. But my point was that they're blaming and calling on the UN. So let's just say, for sake of conversation, that UNRWA has started bringing food in again. The point is that while that time frame, the Flower Massacre, was taking place, they were not present or there to protect or delivering food because they weren't able to. And that's what he was saying publicly. So here's Elon Levy on the 9th, yesterday. Canada and Sweden are making a big mistake by restoring funding to Hamas, the Hamas front, UNRWA. They've seen intel-based information, even though, by the way, don't forget, he's the one saying that it was their responsibility to protect the aid. But you're saying they're Hamas, that you want to kill. And if they were there, you would have shot them. Like you told us, well, we got to shoot the police officer that are Hamas. But then if they're not there, you're saying it's their fault it wasn't protected. Really? Like, do I even need to explain that? Like, that's about the stupidest circular logic. There's a gaping hole in there. You're the one causing them you're shooting. It's just so ridiculous. And most cases, they're not even actually Hamas. The point that they're restoring to the Hamas front, it says they've seen intel-based information about staff they claim who took part on 10/7. And they're turning a blind eye to UNRWA and employing hundreds of Hamas members. Oh, I actually have it right here. Israel yet to provide evidence to back the UNRWA claims. Let's put it right there. You're lying. Very clear. Here is the part that I want to talk about today. And the point with the 23rd was just to show you that they're continually pretending that that's the case, saying it's their fault. UNRWA's a front. It's their fault. Like, they're the one responsible. They're not even involved in the process because of what you created, at least not up until very recently. Now, this is an article from today. That's weird. Because technically right now it's the 11th in Israel. But so the article's from the 9th. UNRWA report claims some agency employees admitted Hamas ties under Israeli coercion. Well, guys, that's already provably happened more than once. Don't forget that the people that they interrogated right in the beginning made a bunch of claims about rape and claims about all sorts of stuff that have now been proven to not happen. Even the way that what they discussed provably did not happen. Based on all the other evidence that there's not a single incident. We've gone over this in depth. We just covered it again. Even the UN report has now been walked back, and even she admitted that it was not even a real investigation, that all she did was simply regurgitate what she was gathering from the Israeli regime. That's the reality. She said it publicly and in front of everybody at the UN meeting. And then Elon the next day comes out and goes, she proved what we said. It's embarrassing. It's very embarrassing. Now, what the point is that if we know and can prove that, and I'll grab this one too, that this is what they're known for. And there's endless examples of this. This is 2017. Israeli court says Shin Bet, like their FBI essentially, pressured a man to give false testimony. Look this up. Do your due diligence. It is a wildly constant thing. It's constantly happening from Israeli pressure, from people in Israel going, call the Israeli media calling out the IDF for forcing them to give false testimony, or Wilkerson telling you they lie about everything. I mean, it's very clear. The point is, we've already proven that they made people say things that we now know aren't true. So here we are again. Now, you could argue UNRWA's using the excuse. Maybe it's true. I think all the evidence backs up the fact they're lying about this, including the fact that we've broken down lies they've already made about the UNRWA headquarters and the lies about what was under it. I mean, even the corporate media exposed that they were lying. Here, let me put this in there real quick. A CNN article saying UN agency accuses Israel of detaining, coercing staffers into false confessions. Same point. and this is where I got the image from. It wasn't the article, actually, but this just says, UNRWA says Israel tortured several employees until they were forced to falsely admit their military ties. But this is where the image comes from. This is from the 20th of January, 2015. 2 countries, 2 paths on torture. I just want to read you a couple quick parts. And then we're pretty much done. As one couple state. Oh, wait. Oh, damn it, I didn't lose it. Oh, man. That's frustrating. Well, the overall point here, you can read. It's the whole thing is worth reading. It's interesting. But there was a specific part, I think was right here, basically just saying that. Yeah, saying, meanwhile, barely monitor, basically saying that after it became kind of publicized that the CIA was torturing people, they kind of walked it back and was like, okay, now they took a hard line saying it's like, no matter what, there is no, like it says here, rejecting any form of course of interrogation for any reason, except they ended up doing it post 9/11, which, lies. But point was, while the U.S. was outwardly at least pretending they didn't want to do it anymore, well, Israel barely monitored or even restrained what they were doing, which in the article discusses is torture, straight up torture. It says then when shocking public revelations forced authorities to acknowledge the reality of the longstanding torture policies, like just think about how ridiculous this is before I go forward. Open human shields. The fact that they literally have a policy called the neighbor procedure, and you can see them multiple times just since October 7th getting caught doing it, and it's public, and international communities have asked them to stop doing it. So yes, they use human shields. How about organ theft? That you can prove they have this constant thing going on. And multiple organizations have called them out for doing it. Euromed Human Rights Monitor proved they were taking organs from Al-Shifa Hospital dead bodies. I mean, this constantly goes on. And it's so out in the surface. Only now has this started to actually break through. People have been so terrified to be called a racist for talking about provable things. Like the blood libel conversation, like Elon said, that's like poisoning the wells. That's like blood libel for claiming that Israeli Jews are poisoning the wells. Well, that's where I pointed this out when I looked into it, because I hadn't really done it that much before. Oh, it turns out, yeah, it's a real story. Here's Haaretz. Placed the material in the wells. Docs point to Israeli army's biological warfare. Poisoning wells in Arab villages. Like it's just, and there's open discussions about poisoning wells today or putting dead animals in them or putting cement in them. The point is that all of these things clearly seem to be easily proven, and yet all of the high-minded journalists of the world just can't seem to connect those dots, or they don't want to. So back to this point, which made me think of that. Meanwhile, while Israel's a constant and proud partner of the U.S., they barely even monitor or restrain their efforts. And then shocking public revelations came out showing that they were long-standing practices torturing people, literally, and still incomplete. And we're talking about Palestinians, guys. And why are we balking about it today? We know it's happening. Imposition of restraints brought Israel practices under greater regulation. Over time, courts and governments limited and defined the allowed scope of torture, so they keep doing it. That was there's one other part, but I'm going to leave it there. The point was just simply that, and that's what this was here, saying that an Israeli activist demonstrates one of the techniques he claimed was used on him, which we can prove these things are being used. I mean, the Guantanamo Bay overlap, we know where this stuff comes from if you actually know your history. I'll include this for you to read as well. So to finish in general, I was just going to go over the food convoy point again to reiterate the fact that even CNN and plenty of others have acknowledged that this satellite analysis showed they fired on the food convoy. Very clear. They're all lying about that. Their investigation showed that didn't happen. Yes, it did. And the fact that Human Rights Watch, since October 23rd forward, they're blocking the aid. October 30th, blocking the aid. December 18th, they're blocking the aid. What is this one? February 26th. They're blocking the aid, starving, defying the court. It's very clear. The block list we can prove. Dropping aid, which ends up killing Palestinians because their parachute doesn't open. Assuming they don't get the dangerous rice they're giving to people in Haiti, right? Like, it's just crazy what's going on. It literally happened, by the way. So if the illusion of the aid doesn't kill them, the aid will kill them by falling on top of their heads. But the point here is that we can see it's an illusion. As Jan points out, or probably Jan, he points out that 6 costly and chaotic tons from the airdrops. They're talking about a new harbor, which I'm going to go into in another show, but it's just an illusion to, I think, create a military installation at a point where they shouldn't be. 15 World Food Program trucks being blocked by the IDF. That's 200 tons. Oh, we're not hearing about that apparently, right? But it's happening. 500 trucks over crossings. Basically, the point is they're making this happen. Here's a Guardian article. Food aid convoy for northern Gaza looted after delay at Israeli checkpoint. Okay, so what happened here? The point is you can prove in this that this is an Israeli checkpoint that held them. And then people ran up and took stuff. Now, if we're in an Israeli checkpoint, that's not on the Gazas. That's what they're telling us. That's why Elon keeps telling us it's on their side. It's an Israeli checkpoint at a secure area. And we're to believe that Hamas members ran up and stole? That's not what the article's claiming. It just simply says, armed people. Come on, guys. It's obvious what's going on. Israel is now taking even elaborate action to stop what's happening here. Read it for yourself. It's constant. It's never ending. But here he is. Hamas is hijacking and hoarding humanitarian aid. Oh, gee, I wonder if that's stemming off the narrative that they spun out on the 6th about people looting the aid on Israeli side, which he doesn't say. Interesting. But that's what he comes out with on the 9th. It is prioritizing as terrorists over civilians in need. Well, I mean, think about what a dumb statement that is. Well, if they are indeed terrorists, then why wouldn't that be the obvious reality? Are you pretending they're terrorists that also work out the needs of their civilians sometimes? Well, that would just be a government, right? And that's the whole point. You're simply just acknowledging what you want is what you want it to be to work to to basically whitewash murdering of people and children starving to death. But Adam rightly says, you spelled Israel wrong. You're literally on video blocking and turning around aid, a-hole. It's that easy to prove. Not because he said it, but because the videos are abundant everywhere. And now you even got Israeli Jews trying to bring aid through and being blocked as well. Here's a great video I'm glad I wanted to play. This is powerful.
I saw the US airdrop food. My first response was really anger. It was horror that this is apparently the best the US can do. Who is the superpower here? Is it the US or Israel? There is no place that's safe. There's no place where you can find reliable food, where people can get shelter. Gazans are exhausted, angry, and scared, and do not buy this argument that the US is suddenly caring about them by airdropping a handful of food.
People have compared these scenes to the Hunger Games, and for good reason. Airdrops is something you use in otherwise inaccessible geographic locations, a mountaintop, the middle of the jungle. What the US has done is provide less meals than would have fit into a single truck. And the reason that these trucks aren't getting into the Gaza Strip is because there's a policy decision by Israel, fully endorsed, supported by the United States, to starve these people into submission.
So the Biden administration is essentially doing the least effective and most expensive method of getting aid to people that need it, because Israel simply won't concede to any American pressure on this one relatively simple point. There is something dystopian about these airdrops and about the way that they pit people against each other.
I really think there's something to this. Like, I think this is really important. And I think why I read this is that this is a deliberate agenda, right? I mean, we have to be very clear about what's going on. These people are being murdered on a regular basis in plain sight in front of everybody. I think that's the same thing. But what's important to realize is that if by making sure that they're like ravenous, irrationally, desperately hungry, that they will fight each other for the scraps, and then they throw in not even like barely enough for, I mean, just to realize that you have thousands of people in an area and dropping food in there for 100 of them. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to fight over the food for their children, whether they even know each other. I mean, it's disgusting. You're turning them against each other. And that's just human nature when driven to desperation. And so they're doing that on purpose. And you think the US can't think about that? You think they can't rationalize what dropping a tiny amount of aid in a starving location with no protection would do? And then again, that's assuming it doesn't just drop on their heads and kill them, which has already happened. Or that the food is poisoned. I'm not saying I know that, but my God, I don't know why we trust these people that have shown themselves to be this maniacal. But here's what Aaron said. Aaron Mate said, a friend in northern Gaza says that people are fighting over the meager amounts of airdropped aid and is worried that it could get deadly. I mean, look, I argue it's like, again, not that Aaron knows it's deadly everywhere else. He's talking about deadly between the engagement between Palestinians. And I think it's already happening. But he's right. I simply said, this is deliberate, making them fight each other for crumbs while Zionists laugh about it on Telegram and TikTok, because that's what's happening. David Roth Lindbergh also points out, as many have, that you can show them bombing in the areas where the U.S. is dropping aid. Now, is that a coordination? You know that Israel's coordinating with the United States government. They've got people on the ground. They've got, I mean, look, they know, like, they're not going to bomb where U.S. soldiers are, probably. I wouldn't put it past them. But my point would be that they know that. They know the generals on the ground with them too. So they're coordinating. So if they're dropping aid, they know where that's going. So you think it's a coincidence that Israel bombed where they were running to get aid? What more do we truly need to see to understand what's going on? He says a picture showing aid drops of Israeli airstrikes targeting civilian areas in northern Gaza at the same time. This time, everything the Zionist terrorists have done is saved in footage and in images. History don't judge them kindly. Thank you to We Are All Palestine for sharing this with me. She's doing an amazing job getting this stuff out. Thank you to all you guys, by the way. You continue to tag me, share information. I couldn't do this without you. Here's another post from We Can Have a Society That Honors Life. I like that. This is just another side-by-side. The same thing, just bombs, aid, showing you that it's crazy. They don't care that people see it. Let me play this. Only 16 seconds. Watch this.
Received assurances from the Israelis that they will not fire upon Palestinians as they seek to retrieve the aid.
Look, our focus is on delivering the aid. I'm not going to speak for the Israelis. Obviously, the focus is to make sure that we're going to get the aid. Thank you.
He just skipped right past him. Yeah, but thank you. Like, so what he was saying underneath him is, well, given their record, clearly, it's the same as saying, well, I assume they're going to do what's legally correct. Why would you assume that? Literally assuming the thing that they've obviously proven they're not doing. That's a very self-serving assumption. But all it really means is I'm sidestepping accountability. You're a coward. That's what you are. A meek follower of whatever you're like. This is about maintaining genocide. Now, look, you can speak from a military perspective and argue that, their mindset is you're not allowed to disobey orders. But I'll tell you what, like, the reality is historically military that refuse an immoral order usually is what turns the tide. Or enforcement arm. Let's put it that way. Right? So this person could make a difference if he wanted to. Just simply standing up and saying, I don't agree with this. It's wrong. But nope, not going to happen. I don't know how you sleep with that. They're starving. And as Malcolm H. Carnegie Middle Eastern Center points out, America can stop the carnage and famine in Gaza, but has not done so. Surely this makes it complicit in mass killing there of 100%. Ben Shapiro says this kind of thing is what happens when you invade another country and slaughter 1,200 of its citizens, which is not what happened, and take another 253 hostages and then don't surrender. What? Collective punishment? I mean, he's literally showing a drone footage of an entire Gaza society destroyed. So you're telling us that that's the kind of thing that happens when a group of Hamas members take a legal action per armed resistance and then also commit some crimes as they're doing so, which is obviously what happened. They're lying about 1,200 still, even though that number is not correct. Invade another country. How do you even say that when you're the one arguing that Gaza is not its own location? How is it invading another country? Like, guys, we have to really acknowledge how clearly some of these people have exposed, whether you think they're honest about everything else, that they are knowingly lying about this conversation. That is just, why would you do that? I don't understand. Like, this person had an entire business. You're just exposing that you're ridiculous to everybody in the world. Why? What's going on? What do they have on you? It just blows my mind. Or you're just a Zionist, But either way, thank you for admitting that you agree with collective punishment. Like that's what you keep doing. You're literally saying, like, imagine this. Imagine, like, let's just say this is the argument that you have any other government, any other country, any other dynamic, that the government invades a foreign country, right? Then, in response, They murder literally everyone in an entire area, citizens involved, and they go, well, that's just what happens when you invade. Well, no, they would say that's a war crime. You killed all those civilians. That's obviously against the law, but not when you're Israel. And Adam says, and October is what happens when you occupy and brutalize a population for a century. Mic drop, right? I mean, of course, they just go, that's not true. Yeah, it is. We all know it. So stop whining about the lies that you think we're not supposed to ignore. Like, it's just so clear that everybody's starting to see past those foundational lies. Now, this one was another Eli David post, but he's got me blocked. But luckily, Daniel screenshotted it, and I already had this up before. Again, the same thing. They just can't stop showing you what they really are. He says, you brought this on yourselves. Release the hostages or keep suffering. And he shows a picture of a bunch of civilians on a beach. So you're telling us it's okay to make all these civilians suffer because Hamas took hostages? That's collective punishment, you absolute moron. Like, I can't believe these people would even think Eli David, as I said before, is not an actual representative, but I've seen exact kind of sentiments from people like Elon Levy. He should be held accountable for that. You are advocating collective punishment as a representative of Israeli government. That's a crime. And he shows the after of what the beach looks like now, because apparently the beach was all Hamas, right? Or whatever nonsense you say to justify destroying an entire beach area or removing every tree or literally destroying down the center of every road, but not really removing it all just so they can't use their roads. You know, it was Hamas. The road had joined Hamas last night. That's why. I mean, the point is these people are maniacal. And I'll go into this later. It's just the breakdown of what's going to happen with that pier. 1,000 military personnel. Yeah, it's an aid mission, right? We need lots of military warships and thousands of personnel. And, come on, guys. It's so transparent. And my point here, Reuters reported that the United States plans to cooperate with Cyprus in the beginning, and Cyprus will examine the shipments in coordination with Israeli officials. Are you serious? Israeli officials are the reason that these trucks are stopped. So you build a pier to bring it in by sea because you're terrified or not able to stop them. And then you involve them to check it. So they're going to do the same damn thing. It's just pathetic. And then there's a bunch of stuff. I'll show you horrible things on footage caught on their GoPros of a killed leader in the Israeli IDF, where they're telling their people to kill civilians. Should be a worldwide breaking story, but nope. Nobody, none of the corporate media cares about it. But the only reason I haven't made that a huge story is because I don't think we need that. I mean, there's Israeli politicians openly telling you to kill civilians. The point is, guys, that you don't need this, but it's there. For those that haven't seen it, they are saying, go kill those people. And at the end, it shows them literally kill an elderly man. It's this guy in the purple shirt. You've probably seen this circulating. Oh, it's going to freeze on me. I know, because Twitter's doing so good, right? Jeez. But this is one where the video shows them sniping an unarmed Palestinian boy. I actually just showed you the one where they lied about it and said he was carrying an RPG, but the investigation by Euromed Monitor proved it was a bicycle. It's just nonstop. I'm going to end with this one, but I want to show you this. This is them. I'll play the, actually here, let's just play it so you can hear it. This is what this is them exploding this entire city block. Because Hamas, right? How does that make sense? Because to Ritter's point, everybody else, if they had the ability to go into the building to place the explosives, that means they were able to verify that there was no Hamas there. So that is a crime. They can prove that. But on top of that, they open fire at the rest of the area. All the houses and all the buildings over there where there are still people. Why? Just for fun. Yeah, and guess who's paying for all that? Yeah, just waste it all. Just fire up into nothing. Kill people in the process because there's people in there. But why not? Because the U.S. is going to keep funding us because they know you will. Look at that, guys. Those white tents right there look like humanitarian tents to me. Either way, it's a waste. They're not firing anything. What's the point of this? It goes on. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This is the mindset. This is the frivolousness, and it's all about destruction. They're not seeking out and pinpoint targeting Hamas. That's insulting to your intelligence. This is from Mondo Weiss. We are the masters of the house. Israeli channels, actual Israeli channels, air snuff videos featuring systemic torture of Palestinians, showing them in these kind of torturous positions, saying this is how it should be. I've talked about most of this. It's not hard to understand. Again, it's an open secret. It's the 72 Versions Telegram channel was admitted by the IDF. They were praising some of the most disgusting things that you'll ever see in your life, laughing about it. Here's a video of a bulldozer taking down a mosque, right? Because Hamas, right? It's all destroyed. No, they're just destroying a mosque, guys, because it's a mosque. Jerusalem Post, just in case you missed it, back in December 17th, that the council head said Israel should make Gaza look like Auschwitz. In case you just didn't understand what they really were like. Torah Judaism says the world's largest anti-Zionist American Jewish diaspora clearly states to everyone that they have severed all relations with Israel and that they do not see Israel as a Jewish state. Torah Jews in America openly declare that they have no connection with Israel and its perverted army, the IDF. Everyone should know that devout Torah Jews do not see Israel as a state. The Jewish diaspora never accepts the Israeli army and the massacres it commits. The actions of Israel and the Zionists have no place in Judaism and the Torah. Now, this is a really sad video before I end with the last thing. Just showing this is just a child that I don't even think truly understands what he's saying. Too young to really grasp the emotion, I think, at least in the moment. Here's what he said. He said, my mother was pregnant when we went to school. We entered the living room and they shot my mom in the stomach. She was pregnant in the 7th month. My father was asleep. He died along with my mom in 1 week. Both of them. On the same day. In front of you? Yes, in front of me. They brought them out. He says they brought them out into the corridor and shot them in front of me. We went out to the corridor and they brought them and shot them in front of me. My God. What's your favorite thing to do or eat? Hamburgers.
طلعوا حافين بالملابس اللي عليهم خايفين متبهدلين لانهم شافوا الناس انطخت حواليهم. ادم طبعا شاف قال انا شفت بابا وهو بتفعفل روحه بتطلع. She's confirming what he said. We saw them dying, breathing on the ground. As soon as he entered the door, they heard soldiers shooting. And guys, there's just no. If we can't understand what's going on by now, we don't want to people. The people that don't want to. This is very clear. And sometimes it's just really hard for me to accept that there is humanity. There are people that are human beings that could ever reach a point that they would allow something like this. Sometimes I just have those moments where I just can't really wrap my mind around it. Elon Levy points out another conflation, it's just how this works. The crowd is shouting, Zionist scum off our streets. What they're saying is, I think there was another thing too. Either way, I think they go on to say like something else, free Palestine, whatever. The point is, what they're saying is Zionist scum off our streets. So for those that just happen to not know, Zionism is not Judaism. Zionism is a political organization. And it's amazing that they can even try to conflate those things. They're just simply the obvious reality. Zionism is not Judaism. Judaism is Judaism. Zionism is a group that created themselves and pretend that they're the same. It's just crazy. It's like saying the last American vagabond is Christianity. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Just because I make that statement does not make it the truth. Just because I call you a racist. So when they're saying Zionist scum off our streets, maybe they mean something else. You don't know that. I don't know that. But the reality is most of these protesters, in a general sense, because I'm looking into these conversations, I'm talking to groups, the Jewish Voices for Peace, they're not speaking about Jewish people. A lot of these groups are Jewish groups themselves. They're talking about Zionists because they're smart enough to know the difference. So the only thing you can do is call them a racist. So he says Zionist scum is the politically correct way of saying dirty Jew. It's just, my God, it just doesn't stop. That's all they have. And all I said was, and this is the point, I really make a point of this, guys. Write this down, make it a meme and post it. This is the best response, in my opinion, to the people that try to make everything critical of Israel racism, or try to make it about Jews or Judaism or some kind of overlap. I say only racists and Zionists make this about Judaism. And you happen to be both. That's the line, though. Only racists and Zionists make this about Judaism. Right? So, I mean, there's not really a response to that. All they can do is double down and say, well, you are more racist. Like, the point is that we're talking about political actions, government murder. You making it about Jews are the one making it a racist. You have racists and Zionists. And I said the rest of the world is specifically and explicitly calling out the genocidal crimes of an openly Zionist government and those supporting it. That your only response is you hate Jews, in fact, shows racism and desperation. That's important. I really want that to get traction because it's hard for them to respond to that. Lastly, I'm sorry I've been clearing my throat so much tonight. There's something. Torah Judaism again, to finish. I'm not going to play it just because it's just them chanting, but I just want to see this is, I focus on this group. Look at this, guys. Hold on. Oh, and now it says following. Look at that. Oh, now it didn't even, anyway. For those in the video, you probably it said not following. Very strange. Anyway, Torah Judaism, I've referenced many times in the past. They're a very big group. They're in Israel and the United States and in London. And that's why I tend to do it, because they're large. But there's a lot of other groups. I think there's even one called maybe just Torah Jews, I think. I forget. There's another group like that that's the same kind of thing. It's an overlap. But there's also lots of Jewish organizations just calling for ceasefire. But the point is that they're adamant about this. And if you are of the mind that Israel is saying to the Jews, and they're defending all Jews and everyone's on their side, it's just not the case. In fact, I'm starting to feel it's at least a huge, if not majority, of Jews around the world that at the very least just don't identify with the way that Israel puts it forward. They may see it as the Jewish state, but they don't feel the way that they're projecting it. That every Jew feels like they're at threat and every Jew feels like they're only safe when Israel's around. The reality is that Zionism creates their insecurity. That's what they're telling you right here. So if you don't believe, you want to call me a racist, well, listen to what these Jewish gentlemen have to say about it. The Zionist state of Israel is not a safe haven for Jews. Jews are under the pressure and oppression, of Zionists in the Holy Land. That's the reality. You could even call them the human shields they use in their settlements between them and the Palestinian entities. That's how they see it, right? They're in these illegal settlements, and that's what happened when they acted on their armed resistance on October 7th. He says Zionism is not Judaism. Israel is not the state of the Jews. Now, everyone should know this truth. Zionists are not Jews. They are an immoral group that uses Judaism for their own interests and is against the Torah and the Jewish religion. Even the Jews are fed up with these Zionists, guys. I agree. That's what he said. I agree with that. Zionists do not do all the dirty things that Judaism forbids and say are sins. And they use this as a tool to achieve their goals. Very well put. I completely agree with that. So we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Damn it. I still get close to 4 hours every time. The time, I just can't get so much information to get into. But I know most of you aren't concerned with that at the moment. And I think that what's funny I thought about today is, I don't get swayed or cowed along by what other people do or what's supposed to be happening or that. I do my own thing. I do what I believe is the most correct, most moral, whatever. I trust my own instincts. And so what's funny as I was thinking about it today is that the way that the momentum is going, whether honest or not, is shorter, right? Shorter clips, shorter time, shorter tweets, that's wherever they want your attention span shorter. They want you to be less engaged for longer content, less thinking. And it wasn't like I thought this through and that's why I did it, but I'm realizing, I was going the other direction. My shows are getting longer, getting more in depth, more information, which of course, to some degree, lessens the reach for some people. But as I've always said, the most popular shows in history have always been the long form talk, like a Rush Limbaugh, and not to say that it's popular for everybody, but just historically the most engaged with are always these longer engaged shows, Joe Rogan and so on. And yet I get this pushback like this is a problem. I think that's a disingenuous thing. Not to say that those that just want it to be shorter are lying, but that I think that it's good and actually helping fight the propaganda to have a more thoughtful, long, engaged discussion type show. At least that's what I was thinking today. In any case, it just means that, we need more of this kind of engaged conversation, thought, being able to consider what other people are saying, whether you agree with it or not, put yourself in the position, try to make sense of it. Like I said before, like a debate situation, you get put up there to debate something, you may get put on a side you don't agree with, but the job is, you have to defend this argument. And it's a good practice to be able to try to defend something that you don't agree with, because all it really shows you is that you can engage with data in a benign way and just go, okay, here's what the argument would be. And you have to think about it like that today. The partisan narratives are so drowning. Everything gets muddled and we just lose sight of things today. So it's important that we continue to see clarity, have clarity through all of this, as there's so many elements trying to drag you down into a muddy system where all you can see is what they're telling you and what they're pointing to. So thank you for supporting this platform that's fighting to do something different. So thank you for being here. And again, if you'd like to support this platform, there's a lot of ways to do so. I included the link to the Give, Send, Go. It's right at the top of the link, so I'll include right when I get off the show today. Like I said at the beginning, it's something special. What we have started here, guys, what you have started, what we are, and the amount of support that we've gotten. And even Derek was saying the same thing. As I said, I think we're talking on Wednesday. We're going to talk more about this and the fact that we are going to continue and so on. But that he was saying the same thing. The amount of support that we've received from people, it just, it shows us that we're on the right track, obviously. And it means a lot to us from the heart. But I'm gonna leave you with that the clip that I made, just because I think it's funny, from the Back to Future thing. And I believe I'll be doing a show tomorrow, most likely. Either way, I'll be letting you know on. For those, by the way, I guess only people at the end of the show probably don't need to hear this, but the wire.com app that we use is a good way to get a notification for the upcoming show. Because I know that my times can vary because my research is what guides me, not necessarily like a timeline. But as well as the Twitter account and the website and so on, but just keep up on what we're doing, and you'll hear, really what most people do, as I understand it, is just check in the morning, right, and see if there's a new show as opposed to catching it live. But it's fun to engage live with the community, so don't miss that on that as well. And the Substack, we've got some more articles coming. I believe Matt Arrett's going to be writing one. I've got more coming out. Lots of ways to support us. So thank you for being here, guys. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
She's just trying to keep you respectable.
Well, she's not doing a very good job.
Terrible.
Save the last American vagabond. Save the last American vagabond.
There you go, lady. There's a quarter.
Thank you. Don't forget to take a flyer.
Where were we?
Right about here.
Jennifer!
It's my dad.
Right.
I've got to go.
I'll call you tonight.
I'll be at my grandma's. Here, let me give you the number. Bye.
That's the power of love.